Woodruff waiting. Camilo Doval pitches, and he got him.
And just like that, the San Francisco Giants start one of the most difficult road swings on the season with a very much sort of typical Giant win here in 2025. Just enough offense, defense shaking in time, good starting pitching, and the relief pitching sort of the story on the game. 3-1 is the final score. Welcome in once again to the Orange and Black Wrap alongside Sam Lovin. This is Dan Bowen. We've got you covered for the next couple of hours. Talking about what lies ahead of this Giant team. Also, as we reach officially the midway point of the season, we'll take a look back at what has been a very entertaining first half of the campaign. Sam, let's bring you right in. How you doing this morning?
Yeah, hello there, Dan. Got a bit of a short staff today here, so we're mixing things up. Got you in the A chair. I'm back here in the studio pressing all the buttons and doing all the talking today, or half of the talking today along with you. But yeah, Giants get a 3-1 win over the lowly Chicago White Sox, improved to 45-37 on the season. Landon Roop getting the win. He improves to 6-5, sporting a 3.45 ERA. Camilo Doval getting the save there. That's what you heard Dave Fleming's final call, courtesy of NBC Sports Bay Area. And yeah, Dan, this was a frustrating week. I'm not gonna lie. Watching this team get flail around, or should I say flounder around against the Marlins, who, you know, Marlins also being a fish. Yeah, that was a rough 3-game sweep to have to digest this weekend. Going into the South Side, it's called Rate Field now. I always thought it was Guaranteed Rate Field, but it doesn't really matter. I don't know if you've ever been to that ballpark out in the South Side of Chicago, Dan. It is an awful ballpark. But Giants do get the win over the White Sox, thank God, because if they followed up a sweep of the Marlins with struggling against the White Sox, we would have been having some problems this morning on the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap.
Well, I tell you, it's the beginning of a very difficult road swing. So you like to start things off with a positive note, and they'll take the 3-1 victory. But here's the challenge, is that, and this is really what separates baseball from that of the NBA and the NFL. It's moments like this. We always talk about the battle of attrition, sort of the last team standings. This is what it's all about. I really welcome this when it comes to baseball. It stretches like this. The Giants don't have a day off for 16 days. 16 days. Give me another sport where you got to go 16 days without a day off. And so this is really going to be starting today with Robbie Ray, is that there's a long way to go, but you got to preserve that bullpen, which has been so good for San Francisco throughout the entire season. Really has been sort of their identity. But as they begin this long, difficult road swing of 10 games, it's in the midst of 16 consecutive games. And so preservation, especially when you think about the back end of that bullpen or anybody coming out of the pen, is really key going forward.
No, you're absolutely right. Again, Dan, you mentioned the long stretch of games they got here. Again, 16 games out of day off. That's not even their longest stretch of the year. Remember, back in April, they played 17 straight games in a row without a day off. So this is nothing that this team is this isn't new to them. They're used to this. They can handle it. Well, they've handled it before. Hopefully, they can handle it again. But you know, and a great start there by Landon Roop last night again. But you mentioned the bullpen. Roop does go 5 1/3 innings. You would probably like to see him complete that 6th inning there in that situation. But another thing about this road trip they got here, Dan, through Chicago, through Arizona, and then to Sacramento, it's going to be a hot road trip, too. You know, it was I think, mid-80s and humid in Chicago there yesterday. They got 2 day games coming up. And that's just going to really play into the you need to keep these guys fresh situation that you mentioned just now there. Because, yeah, guys could very much run out of gas very quickly on this road trip. And when you come back from this road trip, what do you get? Oh, you get the Phillies and the Dodgers back home. So this feels like such a huge stretch in the Giants season. I'm not going to say it's going to make or break the season, but what the Giants do on the field between, well, starting this week against the Marlins, all the way up to that, Philly series, going into that Dodger series, could very well determine what the Giants are going to do at the trade deadline at the end of next month.
And while it's always difficult going 16 straight days without a day off, it's thankfully against some of the teams that you can beat, at least on paper, although we thought that about Florida. So the White Sox shouldn't keep you up at night. Matter of fact, I do want to ask you later in the show, can the Colorado Rockies win more games than that of the White Sox a year ago, which is 41. They're at 18 right now. We'll keep an eye on that tally. But
wow, they're 18. They're heating up then.
Yeah, they are, right? But when you think about, then you got the A's. And listen, Arizona's not playing very well right now. There's talk about them potentially being sellers at the deadline. So, yeah, it's tough, but thankfully you're not taking on Philadelphia, the New York Mets, and some of the better teams out of the East. But as I understand it, shouldn't the Heat, as much as we're trying to make excuses, and I'm still holding out for the good guy that's my man, Willard Dibs, at some point, and he's showing signs. But Willard Dibs and Rafi, right? These are two guys that, Rafi Devers, that apparently enjoy sort of this warmer weather. Like that's sort of, that's more familiar to them in terms of their upbringing. They like to hit this sort of thing. So I think, it's always difficult, when you're playing the humidity that is the back east right now. But I also think that this might work well to the advantage of some of the Latin players that the Giants are still relying on.
Well, you certainly hope so. If feels like we might be grasping at straws here to find whether or not these guys are going to heat up. Devers last night going 1 for 4, struck out 3 times. Adames 0 for 3, did score a run though. I believe he was part of the. He scored on that Patrick Bailey triple there that happened later in the game, but. Yeah, Adames even said at the beginning of the year that he does heat up when the weather heats up, and it's at the point where you better heat up in the second half, dude, because it's getting frustrating trying to defend you week in and week out for the slow start that you're having to your tenure here.
Well, I would like to say that he's showing signs. He's over his last 15 games, I think, has been his most positive stretch with the Giants. I think Willard Dibs is coming around. Now listen, he went 1 for 4 yesterday, but you'll take the base hit, and he did score a run. And Adames, that warning track fly ball, which everybody thought was the walk-off grand slam? Just to go back and revisit last week. I think that play in particular, not to underline one at bat, but really I think that's why you don't get free agents here in San Francisco. Like that's why you miss out on Bryce Hoppers, the Shoheis, the Aaron Judges of the world. They're just not coming to San Francisco because of that particular play. For crying out loud, it's almost July, and people were wearing parkas on a Wednesday night in San Francisco. And when Willard Dibs, who has been making contact, thought he had a walk-off that could point him in the right direction, like here comes Willard Dibs, we just came back from the dead, a walk-off, not only a walk-off, but a walk-off salami, a grand slam home run, and then it dies the warning track. You can almost see the frustration in Willard Dibs' eyes. And I think for that particular play is the reason why, if you're going to get someone like Rafi Devers, it's going to be the unconventional route, not as a free agent, but via sort of that weird trade.
Yeah, we talked about with Dave Fleming actually on the morning roast the morning after that on Thursday morning, and in the moment it looked like it was gone. He probably thought it was gone. You go back and you look at the metrics of it, though. It wasn't quite hit hard enough. I think it was 97 off the bat, which is still technically a hard hit ball. But the launch angle on that one was about 30 degrees, so it was a little too high, not hit quite hard enough for a cold San Francisco night there. But to your point, though, Dan, yeah, other free agents will see things like that, and it's hard for them not to shake their head and be like, that's how they look at this ballpark. That's it. There is a mental aspect, I believe, to Oracle Park that gets in hitters' heads as well, where it's just the reputation of how it, can suppress offense kind of drives how hitters view it. But to your point, though, yeah, that is why the Giants did go get Rafi Devers, who, again, it's been a so-so performance so far. Again, the 3 strikeouts last night, not great. He did have that mammoth of a home run, though, on Thursday. So, that to say is a lot of good, some bad with both of these guys. Either way, though, right now the Giants they're in a start of the schedule they need to be taking advantage of. They got a good win last night against the White Sox, and well, first off, let's start with that first inning, Dan, as we dive into that game last night. White Sox immediately get on the board. Landon Root gets into a little bit of trouble there in that first inning, and Miguel Vargas hit a liner right off the glove of Willie Adames that goes trickling into left field. and Chase Meadroth comes racing around to score.
Well, that ball
was a rocket. That thing was 102 off the bat, bounced off his glove and goes into left field. That was a bit of a tough luck error, which I think a lot of Adames' errors have kind of been. There's been a lot of those tough luck errors for him this year. And then Meadroth scores, and I feel like I was not the only Giants fan thinking this, but like, come on, guys, there's no way we're going to struggle against the frickin' Chicago White Sox. Like, luck in. It all worked out. That was the only run the Giants allowed last night, but like, against these bottom feeder teams, like the Marlins, like the White Sox, the Diamondbacks, I don't think they're a bottom feeder, but they're a team that you should be able to beat. And then the A's next weekend. Like, you got to get fat and happy right here if you're the Giants and stock up on wins, because if the season, when the season comes to an end, several months from now, Dan, and if the Giants are sitting a game or two out of a playoff spot, it's going to be hard not to look back at some of these missed opportunities against teams like the Marlins, against teams like the Rockies, like the walk-off collapse they had in Colorado that ended their 7-game winning streak. You can't drop games against teams this bad. And so seeing the Giants being able to not fall apart last night again and actually beat a team that they are far better than, it was a nice little return to normalcy, so to speak.
Got to score more than 3 runs against the Sox. But I'm with you. You got to compile stacks of wins, as they like to say. They sort of remind me of the Warriors. I always make these Warrior analogies. But the Warriors started 12-4 and then sort of feasted on the beginning of that season and sort of rode that in the early part of the campaign. The Giants, if it wasn't for the 8-1 start, because you think about it, they
also started 12-4, so
11-4, but the 8-1 start put them 7 games over 500. So essentially, they've been a 500 team since then, which is fine. You can't discount the 8-1 start; that's legitimate. But at some point, you're going to have to your point, start stacking wins and play much better than they have. We do want to take a look back at the first half of the campaign. We'll do that throughout the show. But just as we stayed with the contest last night, Root pitched well. He had to come out with some two bases loaded, 1-out jams, and he was good. I hate using this word, going 3 syllables on you, but that was the microcosm, if you will, of sort of the Giants season. Defense was
passable.
Yeah, base running was questionable. And
there's only so much of it last night, though.
Yeah, Wisely gets picked off. You can't have that.
That was a bad one, yeah.
And here you go with, and then it comes down to your starting pitching and your bullpen. I mean, that's sort of who the Giants have been in a nutshell in the first half of the campaign.
Yeah, and again, they did get some good stuff in the bullpen last night. Ryan Walker finishing out that 6th inning despite giving up a balk there. And Ryan Walker on the road, it's been pretty rough for him. It's been a rough year for him overall this season for a guy who came in as the Giants closer this year. So we'll talk about him later on, too, as we kind of dive into the first half as a whole there. And then, Randy Rodriguez, he gets through a little bit of a choppy 7th inning. Then Tyler Rogers, the pinnacle of efficiency, a 5-pitch 8th inning. Tyler Rogers. And, Dan, we are, 2 full weeks of baseball away from the MLB All-Star break, I believe. Next week in Arizona. 2 full weeks away. And Tyler Rogers, being a middle reliever, doesn't have any saves, anything like that. Like, when you're a middle reliever, your only chance of making an all-star roster is if you're on a team like the White Sox or the Rockies, where you're a team that's just so bad that a reliever is the only guy you can send. The Giants are not that team, and it's kind of a shame. It's not a shame the Giants are that bad, but it is kind of a shame in that it sucks that Tyler Rogers is probably not going to get the all-star recognition that he deserves. Because there have been, if you go back to when he entered the league in 2019, there are a few relievers who have been as consistently dependable late in games as Tyler Rogers, and he's had some ups and downs. I know 2022 was a rough year for him, but overall, there are few relievers in this game more dependable than Tyler Rogers, and with a 5-pitch inning last night, he showed exactly why that is the case. And then Camilo Doval coming in, getting the save, and that's one we'll get into at some point this show, the confidence level that Giants fans have in Camilo Doval in the 9th inning. He'll just, it's usually pretty good, but every now and then he has those outings where it's just like, sorry, need a little bit better than that.
Yeah, one of those outings I think you might be referencing was last week. The 4-1s in the ninth inning he gives up to Florida. You talked about a team that you can't lose to. Well, that's pretty much our Camilo the ball. You know what's fascinating about Duvall when you think about the 49ers the Giants bullpen? Is that the Giants, I think, I want to say the Astros, statistically, if you go FIP, right? I think the Astros might statistically have a better bullpen than that of the Giants, but they're 1-2. And the Giants bullpen clearly has been the strength and probably the one thing you would point out and say that's the reason why you're competitive this year. But typically, if you have a strong bullpen, doesn't that always go along with having a strong closer? It's sort of ironic is that they got great middle inning relief, they got great setup guys, but the closer role has been sort of hinky this year, starting with Walker, and Camilo Duvall is still good, but not what you would consider lights out. I mean, if I was to know nothing about the Giants and you would tell me that's the best bullpen in baseball, I'm thinking, oh, we got another Rob Man. Who's this year's Brian Wilson? That hasn't necessarily been the case.
No, it's not. You feel better in innings 6, 7, and 8 than you do in inning number 9, and it's crazy. You come into this year, and Bob Melvin's talked about how we have 2 closers this year, and I think we said it before. It's not unlike quarterbacks. If you got 2, you got none. And again, Walker in the closer role to begin the year, it never felt permanent. Like he's not in order to be a good closer, there's a level of, I think, craziness you need to be able to have. There's an edge you need to have to be able to handle those outs in the ninth inning because they are a little bit different. We saw, Randy Rodriguez, I believe, was in that Rockies game. He tried to close the game out and he learned how difficult closing out games can be. So it's not easy to do. That said, Duvall is still the Giants' best option in that situation there. And I'm willing to give Duvall time to really kind of get settled into the role because, Dan, for young closers, it takes a long time to truly reach that level of just elite dominant closer. And this is also during a time where there really aren't a whole ton of legitimate closers. I mean, Clase with Cleveland, he's been just okay this year. Who's the guy out in New York? Edwin Diaz. I mean, ever since he had that injury a couple of years ago, I feel like we hardly talk about him at all. It's just right now, the closer situation around baseball is just, it's very blah right now. There's just not that dominant shutdown guy that we've seen in years past.
Well, I think to your point, when you talked about and you highlighted Rodgers, that's sort of the way the game has shifted over the years, is that it has become so specialized that what's considered a good start or good outing by our starters is gives you 5 innings. Like when I was growing up, you got to go 7 or 8 to be considered a good start. But that has changed because they're so reliant on bullpens, and I'm talking about today's managers. That's why the Rodgers role is so significant, and it's overlooked. It's not sexy. It's not glamorous. Middle inning relief guy, but it's so pivotal to the success of today's baseball, the way it's orchestrated in 2025. That you need someone like that for Rodgers. And the Giants have those middle inning relief guys, and really that's sort of how baseball is built these days. The closer role is still significant, but it's not like back in the day where you had a setup guy and then you had a closer. Or you had a setup to the setup guy, and then somebody just locked the door and you knew who those guys were. They were household names. It has become much more difficult, a little more scientific now that you get into that bullpen a lot sooner. And those guys from innings 5 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9, and then closing things out, they all share significant roles. And I think that's changed over the years.
It absolutely has changed. It's because it's the whole fear of you don't want to see a pitcher face a lineup for the third time. That's why guys like Logan Webb are such a rare treat these days because they're one of the few guys who can go deep into games. And, Logan Webb, he's a guy who takes pride in leading the league in innings, and he's leading it with like 205, 210 innings, which, Dan, 10 years ago, that's good for 14th, 15th place overall in baseball, more or less, much less leading baseball. And a lot of closers these days, I don't know if it's a kind of like a closer by committee thing or something like that, but it used to be, one guy has all your saves and maybe there's another save here or there from someone else, but now you got teams where you got multiple guys with multiple saves. And so, the days of just having that one lockdown closer at the back of your pen's kind of over. And you look at the saves leader right now. You've got Josh Hader in Houston. He's been around a while, but Carlos Estevez, he's new on the scene. Robert Suarez in San Diego, no one knew who he was a year ago. Tanner Scott in L.A., he's not a guy you look at as a closer. I think he was signed this offseason. So, that it's just the age of the household name closer. I don't want to say it's gone, but it's kind of on a break right now.
So the Giants come up 3-1 winners. Just to stay with the closer role for a second, and just to segue to a position player. Camilo Doval, as we know, well noted. He, of course, he gets sent down last year. This guy was thought to be just one of the big rising stars in Major League Baseball, and he lost his confidence and gets sent down. And we all thought, like, oh my God, what the hell happened to Camilo Doval? Is that the end of his career? No, it was just they hit reset. Like they're like, just, you need to go down and you need to clear your head. You need to get some confidence. You need to go strike out some PCL guys, be dominant again, and then come back up here and be that guy. And it's worked out. It has absolutely worked out. This past week we saw Tyler Fitzgerald get sent down. I don't know about you, but my knee-jerk reaction was, wait a minute. Why is Fitzgerald going down? I know he struggled, but you're going to keep Christian Koss? Like, that made no sense. But I think it's along the same lines that this is not an indictment that we're done with you. This is about, we're invested in you in the future. We need you, much like that of Camilo Doval, to go down and hit reset so that you can come back and be the similar player you were when you first came out of the scene a year ago.
I think that's exactly what's going on there, Dan. And you saw Doval, he went down, he came back last year. He was a much better pitcher. Again, they didn't put him back in that closer role. They eased him back into that daily grind. And, Dan, I go to the old Yogi Berra line. 90% of the game is mental. The other half is physical. The mentality of this game absolutely matters. And I do think Doval going down there, being able to strike out some lesser hitters there, boost your confidence, start to feel like a closer again, that was really helpful for him. And he came up back last year, and again, not as the closer, but he was very good in those late inning roles here. And I thought the Giants, they slow played it a little bit, but they did a pretty good job, I think, of reintegrating Doval back into the closer role. They probably could have done a little bit sooner than they did, because I do worry about how the transition of roles has impacted Ryan Walker, where, he's a guy I like Ryan Walker a lot, but when he comes into games now, you just don't trust him right now. And that's the tough life for relievers in this league, where one bad outing can have fans side-eyeing you for the next couple weeks. And Ryan Walker, as long as he's sporting an ERA north of 4, fans are going to there's going to be a lot of trepidation whenever Walker comes into games. And he's got, unusual mechanics that when those are out of whack, he becomes susceptible to the big innings. He's got a slider that, like any slider pitcher, when they're young and upcoming and trying to figure it out, you're at risk of hanging that bad boy. And when you hang a slider, you're going to have a bad time. So I'm saying all these bullpen roles, they play off of each other. And again, it's at the end of the day, we're talking about all this consternation with the Giants bullpen. It's still the best bullpen in baseball, right up there with the Astros. Tyler Rogers is still the best 8th inning guy in baseball. Eric Miller has quietly got the second best reliever ERA in baseball right now. And then, of course, Randy Rodriguez, who, a lot of people probably want to see him in Atlanta next month for the All-Star game. Again, middle reliever, hard to make that happen. So, when you have a bullpen that's as good as the Giants have, it's easier to kind of stomach the struggles of a Ryan Walker. It's easier to get the ball to Camilo Doval and hope that, you gave him enough of a buffer here that he can hold it. That said, though, bullpen's still better off than most bullpens have been around the league and, last few years of Giants history.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but you'll take it. As you said, it's one of, if not the best pen in all of baseball. So, yeah, if you happen to be out of town and you're listening to us today, you might be saying, wow, that's a rough crowd, man. We would do anything in that bullpen. These two guys are going after they're guys that have absolutely
something negative on a great bullpen here, so maybe we can switch it up on the other side.
But what I want to do on the other side, maybe we can use this as a tease. You talked about the transition at the back end of that bullpen. I want to get into Bob Melvin and just sort of this helter-skelter lineup and your thoughts of who knows who's going to be leading off and who knows in the 3 or the 4 spot. Because it's changing from day to day, man.
Yesterday was an all-timer. So, yeah, we can definitely get into that on the other side.
Yeah, so we'll talk more about the Giants. We'll get in. We talked about the bullpen. We'll talk a little bit more about the starting pitching, but we're going to get into the meat and potatoes. What has really kept people up nights, and that is the hitting, or the lack thereof. The San Francisco Giants continue their series today. It's an afternoon affair against the Chicago White Sox. A great field. That just doesn't sound right. By the way, Flo just went nuts last night after the game. A huge concert. I don't know if you heard about that.
Oh, the Flow Rider concert.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't watch it, but
it was a sellout last night. You're wondering why? Well,
because Flow Rider was in town. What else do you get someone to go to Rate Field?
Exactly. All right, we continue. Your phone calls, 888-957-9570. We're talking San Francisco Giant baseball. Sam Love and Dan Bone just getting our feet wet here on a Saturday morning on 95.7 The Game.
There's something fun and free to do with the kids this summer.
Bailey to right field, sinking, and a dive and a miss by Noda. It's going to go to the wall. Adames rounds third. He'll score. Right behind him, Christian Koss. He'll score, and over to third, Patrick Bailey. The Giants take a 3-1 lead.
Now back to the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap on 95.7 The Game.
Orange and Black Weekend Wrap continues. Sam Lovett alongside Dan Avone on a Saturday following the Giants come from behind 3-1 victory over the Chicago White Sox. And it's not often that we start a show saying the big hit of the day belongs to Pat Bailey.
Yeah, and it was again asked last night, could it be the hit that gets Patrick Bailey going? And Dan, it's something I mentioned a couple weeks ago after he hit that home run. It just seems like every week he gets a hit. Every week when he does get a hit, because it's not every week he's getting a hit, but every week if he does get a hit, as I fade this bed out here on the board and talk at the same time. I'm doing like 6 things at once really quick here, Dan. But is that going to be the hit that gets Patrick Bailey going? It seems like we ask it all the time, and no, it's probably not. But, Dan, it has been, you have to go back to April 11th in New York when the Giants were at Yankee Stadium. That was the last time Patrick Bailey went to bed with a batting average above 200. April 11th. We are on June 28th right now. So we are going on almost 3 straight months of Patrick Bailey being stuck on the interstate. And thank God for his good defense, because otherwise he would not be on this team right now based off the way he is hitting.
Is Cal Riley available for a straight-up swap?
Oh, man, I'd love to get the dumper on here. That would be the big dumper. He I think he officially committed to the home run derby, too, by the way, Cal Raleigh.
Is that 31?
He got 32 home runs now.
32. We'll get back to the Giants. Just a sidebar. Now that we mentioned the big dumper, if you don't know what we're talking about, he's the catcher for the Seattle Mariners, having a remarkable season, on pace for something like 65.
Cal Raleigh, yeah. He's already probably going to break Salvador Perez's record of most home runs in a season by a catcher. Perez of the Royals set that record a couple years ago, hit 43 home runs in a season. Raleigh is going to absolutely demolish that mark, probably.
Okay, so here's my question. Now, typically you would expect his numbers to sort of dip. We talked about the second half of the season. As it gets hotter, you get into the dog days. That typically does not bear well for a catcher, especially when he's so reliant on being your best hitter. But if he comes anywhere close to his first half numbers, would you give him the MVP over Aaron Judge? And Judge is having a remarkable season. But Cal Raleigh is put, because his average isn't nearly as good, and some of the slugging OPS not like that of Aaron Judge. But you're talking about a catcher. Now, he's not catching every day. They got him in the DH. But, Sam, I'm just saying, if he continues this in the second half of the season, and he's encroaching 16 home runs, does he get MVP votes?
That's going to be a tough. He'll definitely get MVP votes. I think you're looking at him and Judge right now. That's your top 2 in the MVP. I got the stats right here in front of me. If you're a person who puts a lot of weight in WAR, which you only should put so much weight in wins above replacement, Judge leads all of baseball right now with 6.1. Cal Raleigh right there, though, at 5.5. And you look at the numbers overall, I mean, there's a lot of back and forth there. At the end of the day, I do think catching, being able to provide offensive excellence and defensive excellence like that and manage a pitching staff like Cal Raleigh has to do, yeah, that's some pretty high-level value. I think it comes down to if the Mariners are in the playoffs at the end of the season, especially if they win the AL West, which they absolutely can do.
You think so? They're fading. The Astros are heading the other direction.
We'll see. There's a long way to go here. If I'll pull up the standings and see just how much work they have to do here. 6.5 back. So they might have to look at the wild card there then. But even still, if the Mariners make the wild card, make the playoffs, and Cal Raleigh is putting up the numbers that he's putting up, yeah, it's hard for me to not give him the MVP in that situation.
Yeah, because the catching position, and that's really what you focus on, because he's a catcher at the end of the day. And the bumps and bruises and all the things you take off the shin guard, getting nicked in the head, on the shoulder. I mean, it's unlike any other position defensively in Major League Baseball. And it's clearly, I mean, look at the situation right now with the Giants, where we justify this guy starting and being a quote-unquote good catcher, and he can't hit a lick.
Patrick Bailey is literally in the lineup every day because of his pitch framing, because of his ability to throw base runners out, because of those back picks that he's been very good at. I mean, let's be honest, Giants fans, we go nuts when Patrick Bailey hits those back picks and gets a guy at first base. Like, I love that stuff. And then again, he's really good at managing this pitching staff, and this is not an easy pitching staff to handle. And so, yeah, defensively, and again, Dave Fleming has said on the station, this is what Buster Posey wants from his catchers. You are doing the defensive stuff behind the plate. You are managing the pitching staff. You're stealing strikes. You're throwing runners out. A catcher's most important role, important job, the most important part of his job is everything he does in the squat behind home plate. Everything else after that, it's kind of just gravy. That being said, though, gravy needs to be above 200 as a batting average. That's just where it is there. But again, it's Bailey. He still finds ways to come through here and there, but it's just until he gets that batting average above 200, it's going to be hard to look at him in the lineup there every day and be like, all right, we got Patrick Bailey coming up, and it's just. He's a far cry from the hitter we thought he was going to be when he burst onto the scene in 2023.
And he was good when he first came onto the scene, which is why I'm going to hold that. I'm that guy. I'm that guy in the room.
Positive manifestation.
I'm telling you that I'm going to be the optimistic voice here because I do believe that he's going to hit. And I don't mean hit. Listen, if he hit for 225, we'd take it. But he's going to hit better than he has in the first half of the season. He just has to. It's like playing blackjack in Vegas. I can't lose this many hands, can I? At some point, the law of averages is going to dictate that I win a couple of these. And so I do think at some point he's going to be able to hit just a little bit. And even just a little bit is a significant improvement for this baseball team in the second half of the season. And I do think that Willie Adames, I'm going to buy that Willie Adames, what he's telling me right now, that he's coming out of this funk. I think the 15 games where he's showing that he's making contact, and this looks like the guy. I'm buying Willie Adames. Rafi Devers is a guy in the second half of the season that I think is going to be a huge addition to this team offensively. So as difficult as it has been in the first half of the season with this offense, I think with those two guys, I think Bailey's going to hit a little bit, and a little bit you'll take. That to go along with the return of Chapman, who I think is your best position player, and it was so untimely when he went out because he was just beginning to square it up. That, and here is really sort of the X factor. Casey Schmidt. I think because of those guys, the San Francisco Giants offense isn't going to resemble anything that it has been in the first half of the season. What say you, Sam?
So you got Bailey, Chapman, and Schmidt there as your X factors. I don't disagree with that, and I think, yeah, Adames as well will be in there, and a guy I want to throw in there is a guy who I want to see, a guy who I want to buy stock in while it's low now, so that way I can cash out big when it soars up in the second half. I need to see more from Jung-Hoo Lee. He has been lost in the wilderness big time for this whole month, really. He's hitting, I believe, like 180 on the month right now, in the month of June. And here, I wrote it down on my notes. Yeah, sorry, 162 this month. I gave him a little more credit. Hitting 162, and the at-bats quality there, Dan, it's not been good lately. There is a book out on Jung-Hoo Lee right now. If you go away on him, you will be able to beat him. It's 52% of the pitches he has seen this year, Dan, have come on the outer third of the plate or outside or further away from him. So basically, it's like half of the pitches are being thrown, on the furthest third of the plate from him. So they're making him reach out to go get these pitches, and he's not doing anything with it. He's not barreling them up. He's not hitting them hard enough. It's a lot of ground balls and pop-ups. And the Giants are kind of struggling to kind of figure out where to put him in the lineup right now. They put him down as far as 7th last week. They're keeping him the 5-6 spot. They don't want to put him in those first 3 spots anymore, which is where, he was the 3 hitter at the beginning of the year. And, I remember at the time thinking, this is your leadoff guy. Why are you batting him 3rd? He got to a great start in the 3 hole, and you're thinking, okay, what do we know? This seems to be working out pretty well. But now it's at a point where Like, I got to wonder, Dan, if this was a guy who came up through the minor leagues, and this was his second full big league year, and he was drafted, developed, came up through the minor leagues, and when I was in the big leagues, what would the Giants be doing with him? But this is a guy who was playing in the KBO, had a lot of success in the KBO, and then came over here for a big chunk of money, and he's struggling right now, and obviously the Giants are going to keep him on the roster, but if this was a different situation where he's making a much lower salary, a rookie salary, or a first contract, or a pre-arbitration salary for a drafted player, I think the Giants would have sent a guy in that situation back down to Sacramento along with Tyler Fitzgerald to fix his swing. And I'm not saying that the Giants are going to send Jung Hoo Lee to Sacramento. I'm not saying that they should. But I feel like if the situation was a little bit different with him, the conversation would absolutely be being had by more people than just the two of us here right now.
And I think if you're looking for a big second half surge from that of Jung Hoo Lee, we talked about Willard Dibs as a second half player. I wouldn't necessarily feel very comfortable about taking that bet. And here's why, is that the WBO plays a significantly shorter schedule than that of the MLB. And typically Korean hitters, when they're first coming into Major League Baseball, they struggle in the latter part of the season just because they're not used to playing that much baseball. My thing with Jung Hoo Lee, and I don't mean to go Johnny Baseball on you, but I can tell you that, and I mentioned this to you last week, all of a sudden he's become this dead pull guy. And that's what happens. If you're a dead pull guy and I'm pitching you outside and you're trying to pull everything, that's a ground ball to the second baseman every single time.
Every single time.
And what I would do with Jung Hoo, I would find Ichiro. I mean this, I'm not being tongue-in-cheek, and I would say, Ichiro, what are you doing these days? I'm going to pay you a consulting fee. Come and talk to this man. Because they're very similar in terms of their approach. Ichiro was always out on that front foot. If you went the other way, he would make you pay. He's going to right field, and you shoot one through that gap between third and short. And then eventually you have to come a little bit more, and then he starts spraying it and pulling the ball. But he had this sort of approach where he would almost like hitting a softball. For those of you that are softball players, your swing plane is different, right? It's like you almost swing down the ball. And that was sort of Ichiro's approach. And when I look at this Jung Hoo Lee, I'm like, God, he looks like Ichiro. He looks like a guy that is fleet of foot, that can use the entire field. Thank God there isn't a shift, because I would not play anybody on the left side of the diamond for this guy.
And what's crazy is at the beginning of the year, Jung Hoo Lee was going the other way a lot. Daniel, look at his spray chart, and there's all sorts of hits that he had, all sorts of base hits that he had into left field here at the start of the season. So there was a time this year where he was able to get in on these pitches and go the other way. And I think part of that is, again, as you mentioned, teams are starting to go away on him, and he hasn't figured out quite yet how to adjust his swing to use that all-field approach when pitchers are pitching him differently. So, this is just part of the growing pains that he has to go to. And you mentioned, the struggles that KBO hitters face. I look at Ha-Sung Kim with the Padres. He is, he had a great year last year, but his first year, I believe, was 2021. And it was a rough year for him. I think he hit under 200 for the season. And it took a year or two for him to fully acclimate to baseball here in America. And I got to wonder if Jung Hoo Lee, who, again, lost all of last season or most of last season to a shoulder injury after he ran into that wall on Mother's Day, this is basically his rookie year 2.0. And this is the first time that Major League Baseball has been able to get a book on him, get a scouting report on him, utilize that scouting report and exploit a weakness in his swing. And I think that's just what we're seeing right here. We are seeing the natural growing pains of one Jung Hoo Lee. And at the end of the day, it's just going to be on him and the coaching staff to figure out a way to identify how that they are exploiting him in the strike zone, which, again, they're going away on him, but there's probably more to it than that. And it's also going to be on them to figure out, okay, what's the adjustment you're going to make? And then it becomes incumbent on him to then actually make that adjustment, work more counts, and start driving that ball the other way, because he can't just keep being an automatic out in whatever spot in the lineup that he's going to be in, because, Dan, it's at some point, the Giants, again, they're looking for what needs they need to address at the trade deadline. I don't expect another Rafael Devers type swing, but catcher, we're looking at that. Starting pitching, looking at that. Second baseman, looking at that. the Giants cannot add center field to their shopping list as well. It's just there's so many spots on the roster that the Giants need to address. Jung-Hoo Lee could do this team so many favors by taking center field off of that list.
You mentioned second base. Has Casey Schmidt not provided some level of security when Chapman comes back? Is that a seamless transition, or is that us just talking?
Well, I think, again, we saw this happen a few years ago with Casey Schmidt. Again, when he first got called up, he burst onto the scene, and he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and everyone was excited to see Casey Schmidt in the lineup because he was just something different. He drove the ball a little bit differently, and also he was the first, hitting prospect from the Farhan Zaidi era to truly matriculate his way up to the big league roster and showcase skills that would make you say, yeah, you're going to be around, every day for the most part in some capacity. And then the hitting just tailed off. And it's been like that until recently. This is all to say, Dan, what we're seeing from Casey Schmidt, I don't know if this is just becoming who he is or if we're just seeing a hot streak here. That being said, I do know that when Chapman does come back, Casey Schmidt is going to be the primary second baseman probably for the rest of July. And so they're going to give him a good run to see if he can lock down that position because, again, it's if you could take center field off the board, if you could take second base off the board, if Bailey can start hitting a little bit better, if he can get above 200, then you take catcher off the board. Now you have three positions that you don't need to worry about, and you could focus on what I think is slowly becoming a greater need, which is they need another starting pitcher. And so it's going to be incumbent on these guys to take these issues off the board here in the next month. Otherwise, the Giants could have far too many needs to address at the trade deadline.
I do want to get into the starting pitchers, but before we do that, we talked about this during the break. It's almost as if Bob Melvin is just picking this starting lineup out of a hat.
That lineup last night, when I first saw it, it was just like, come on. I saw the tweet from Shayna Rubin, who one of the elite beat reporters of the Giants media contingent. She tweeted out, and I'm looking like, now, come on, this is be a joke. Yaz in the cleanup spot? Like, to your point, yeah, that felt like names out of a hat last night with that lineup.
Well, I'm just curious. Now, you're never going to hear from any of the players, but if they do struggle, this is typically when a player begins to chirp a little bit. Like, I can't think it sits well, especially with a guy like, Flores or Adames or guys who can hit in this league that show up to the park and have no idea where they're going to hit. Would logic just tell me that you want some sort of structure? I want to know. I might be struggling, but I want to know in the 3 spot or the 4 spot. Like to be up and down this lineup, I don't. As a player, and I don't know this is fact, but I'm thinking like that might be a quick way to distance yourself from your team.
No, absolutely. And by the way, that's Dan Devone you're hearing. I'm Sam Lohman. 888-957-9570 is the number. We want to hear from Giants fans on all what we're talking about right now. Who's the hitter who's struggling that you're going to buy stock in? And then definitely want to hear your thoughts on just where the Giants stand at the 81-game mark of the season. They hit the 82-game mark last night with a 3-1 win over the Chicago White Sox. But Dan, you make it. I'm going to use an example that we're kind of going through right now in terms of roles and structure. So, yeah, I do believe hitters like to show up to the ballpark knowing what their job is going to be, knowing what their role is going to be, and knowing that that's the role that they're going to be doing. So you look at what the situation you are in right now. For those watching on YouTube, brought to you by First NorCal Credit Union, you'll notice that I am behind the glass right now in the studio, running the board, making sure we're on air, and also talking to you, Dan. And you are in the driver's seat for a show that you're usually in the B chair for. I'm usually in that chair because I found out last night from our director of sports, Lucas Alexander, that we didn't have any producers on hand to come in and work the board for us this morning. Steven Risotto is on assignment in parts unknown. Zach Green, who was on the board last week, he was up at Cache Creek helping Willard and Dibs out with their remote yesterday. And New York Ken, he is actually Hawaii Ken right now. That's where he is at. And then our guy Cam Williams was on the board late last night doing the Valkyries game, which, of course, great win for the Valkyries over the Chicago Sky last night. Shout out to the Valks there and all the fun being had at Valhalla. So there's a role that I expected for myself this morning on the show, which is to be sitting in the chair that you're sitting in, talking to you, sitting in the other chair in that studio. And that all got blown up. And here I am. I got to execute in this different role. And I have no choice but to execute. But it's frustrating. It's different. It's tough to do a show in this situation. And that's just on a minor radio scale. So imagine that on a grander scale of Major League Baseball, where you're coming to the ballpark and you're thinking, well, all right, I'm usually going to be the 3 hitter. So I need to think about what I need to do in that spot. Oh, hold up. Why am I in the 6th spot all of a sudden? Or you're coming in and think, I'm at the 9 spot, the order. My job is to flip the lineup. Oh, no, now all of a sudden I'm in the top 3 of the lineup. I'm going to see a completely different approach. So that is all to say, yeah, this mix and matching that Bob Melvin is doing at the lineup, I hate to say this, but it's given me shades of what we went through watching this team for the last 6 years under Farhan Zaidi. Like, we were supposed to be past this. And so, yeah, I am getting frustrated by it, Dan. And again, it's not all Bob's fault, because I do think the injury to Matt Chapman is a part of that, but still pretty frustrating. I'm sure players probably have some sort of way about it too.
You mentioned Matt Chapman. I've heard varying sort of reports as to when he'll return, because they really need this guy. What are you hearing? Is it after the All-Star break that, for the most part, you feel pretty safe about him coming back to the team?
So from what it sounds like, well, there's the timeline that he has for himself, and then there's the timeline that the Giants have for him. I would go off the timeline that the Giants have, because he's expecting, as Bob says, whatever Chapman says adds like another few days on to whatever he says. I don't think he's throwing the ball yet, and he still has to show that he can swing the bat, and then he's got to do a rehab assignment. So that all being said, he probably comes back earliest during that Dodgers series at Oracle Park the weekend before the All-Star break. That is my guess as to when he will probably come back. And until then, it's probably going to be a bit of a mix and match lineup here, because Bob said this a few days ago during one of his pregame scrums that, until Chapman comes back, we're not going to have a lot of structure in this lineup. And I don't really like that. I think you could still get some structure in this lineup with Chapman out, but it's really just going to show how just immensely important Matt Chapman is to this Giants lineup.
We talked about in-game praise and shout out to Cal Raleigh just getting outside of Giant baseball. They're going to see a guy coming up in a couple of days when they take on Arizona. As good as Chapman is at third base, a lot of people have him or Manny Machado going to the All-Star game. There's a guy, Gino Suarez, for Arizona. This dude's money, man. This guy is, again, we watch Patrick Bailey struggling. We just salivate. Look at the Cal Raleigh guy. My God, there's somebody who can play that position and give you 31 home runs and 70 ribbies at this juncture. Well, this Suarez guy at third base, although I would take Chapman. Chapman has just proven that he's a better third baseman defensively. And, Suarez is putting together huge numbers in the first half of the season. I'm just saying, as you get ready to take on Arizona, just circle a third baseman by the name of Eugenio Suarez.
Eugenio Suarez. Yeah, I don't think the Giants need another corner infielder right now, though. I mean, Josh Naylor, I think, can play some first and outfield. He is also
you think they'll sell
the Diamondbacks. I don't know, because again, it could be tough, because they got Corbin Burns, obviously out for the year with Tommy John. He's gonna be missing a lot of next year. He has that opt out after 2 years. He will not be exercising it. He is going to be an Arizona Diamondback for the next 6 years. They still got a great young cornerstone player in Corbin Carroll. There's still a lot of talent in that lineup. They have a good pitching staff even without Corbin Burns. I believe with the Diamondbacks, their issue is just the bullpen has just not been good at all so far this season.
Zach Gallen sucked too.
Yeah, Arizona, 4.76 bullpen ERA. That's the rotational ERA. Their bullpen ERA is still pretty bad, as well as I try to locate it here on this stat. Here it is, a 5.19 bullpen ERA for the Arizona Diamondbacks. So if they could go out and get some bullpen help, they're probably feeling a little bit different about themselves. Corbin Carroll, wrist fracture, he'll be out for a few weeks. And that certainly complicates things. And the Diamondbacks, they are in a bear of a division with the Padres, Giants, and Dodgers ahead of them, and the National League wildcard race is tough as it is. I would lean. I think the Diamondbacks probably hold firm for the most part. Maybe they make a small deal here or there. I don't think they become all-out sellers, though.
Yeah, and you know why? Because baseball now, they've extended the playoffs. 6 teams out of each league now get in. You can't make these decisions now. All it takes is one winning streak, and you're right back in things, right? So, we'll see Arizona coming up in a little bit. We'll talk more about the San Francisco Giants. What is it that they need to improve to get into the postseason? And just really quick, before we get to the break, when you talk about Arizona, just to bring it back home, Arizona was the darling of baseball just a few years ago. And it just goes to show you how quickly things can change. So when you talk about, we're evaluating the Giants and it's about tomorrow. No, hell no. If you're sitting in the playoffs and your team that's 8 games over 500 win today, you want to know why? There are no guarantees about tomorrow. All right. I want to know, what is it the Giants need to do to improve? And I want to hear from you. How do the Giants grade this team in the first half of the season as we hit the midway point? Sam Love and Dan Bowen will continue right here on 95.7 The Game after this.
Planning a road trip, Tahoe, Napa, or down the coast? Make your first stop Valvoline Instant Oil Change. Drive in, stay in your car, and be...
Now Rojas, who's got good speed over at first. Tie game. 1 out, bottom 4. On the ground to short. Adames, there's one. Wisely to first. Got him, double play.
Taylor made.
Now back to the Orange and Black Weekend Wrap. The best Giants talk in the Bay on 95.7 The Game.
Pitcher's best friend, especially when you got the bases loaded, which of course Steiny Guru had to pitch out on a couple of occasions last night. Giants come from behind. They actually trailed by a digit early in this game, 1-0. They win it. 3-1 is the final score. San Francisco now improves to some 8 games over 500. The Giants continue this 10-game road with an afternoon affair once again out at the Rate Field in Chicago, battling one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball, that being the White Sox. I got to be honest with you. I know some of these guys, but aside from Mike Tauchman, I'm like, who the hell is this? Kind of like the Marlins. Good to see Tauchman is actually, when I think of Tauchman,
he's still kicking, yeah.
He was sort of the poster child of that 2021 season. It was journeyman players like that had these career years that Gabe Kapler would just substitute like in the late innings, and he'd come up with a walk-off home run. Like every button Gabe Kapler pushed that year just came up roses, and Tauchman was a perfect example of that year.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was at least 3 games that Tauchman won basically on his own. There's obviously the catch that he had against Albert Alfa to rob Albert Pujols of a walk-off home run that was Memorial Day weekend of that year, that more or less I felt like that was the moment where it's like, okay, let's go. And that's where that 2021 team, which was already playing pretty well at the time.
And they beat Kelly Jansen in that game, right?
Yeah. And that's where that 21 team really just, took off. And then he had the big home run against the Rangers in Arlington of that year. I forget what part of the year. I think that was end of July he had that. And then he had another really big home run against the Angels down in Anaheim as well in extra innings. I remember that was the game. It went so long. Dave Fleming had to get to he had another commitment. I think he had it was a Little League World Series commitment or something like that. So he had to leave, and the Giants had to merge their radio and TV broadcast together. And so the radio broadcast was then simulcasted onto the TV broadcast. And it was just one of those, like, the Giants won that day, so that's why we can look back on and laugh at that whole situation. But yeah, those are 3 big games Tauchman had where it's just like, again, we make this whole thing about WAR, wins over replacement. How many wins is this guy worth more than a replacement player? Those 3 games alone, Mike Tauchman was worth 3 WAR because he basically won 3 games for the Giants with that catch and with those 2 home runs he had that year in 2021. So, yeah, really cool to see Tauchman still there. It sucks he has to be on the White Sox, though. Spent a couple years in Wrigley Field on the north side last couple of years, though. He goes 0 for 5 with a couple punch-outs last night. But nice that we're talking about Mike Tauchman.
Speaking of the Chicago teams, I don't know if you happen to see the Cubs this year. I tell you this,
they're incredible.
Show. PCA must-watch TV. He's one of those guys who's coming to play like, I got to watch this guy. And I couldn't say that. I mean, last couple of years, I don't know, maybe Tatis. But I don't know if you happen to see that he thought that this happens in Major League Baseball, but he thought that there was 3 outs in the inning, there was only 2, and it cost him a run.
I mean, that's not the worst. I mean, who was that? Our guy, Larry Walker? Was it him who caught the ball? It was out number 2, and he gave it to a fan in the stands.
Yeah.
And then he goes back to try and get the ball. So it happens to everyone. It happens to the best of us. But no, PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong, one of the elite names in baseball.
Well, the reason why I mentioned that, I'm just curious, because I was back east, and it gets hot this time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
This past week, I am telling you, Sam, it was on fire.
Because you're in New York during the week.
Well, it was like over 100 degrees.
And you got that humidity on top of it, too.
And I was just wondering,
makes it so much better.
Does that take a toll? I mean, seriously, I think you're a little bit more prone to sort of these mental mistakes. When you're playing out there in a place like that as Chicago, I'm not making excuses for the guy, but you're beginning to see a little bit more as things get a little bit weird over this last couple of weeks. And I'm just wondering whether these guys can even think straight with that suffocating heat because they make an excuse for the Star Center.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up here if we want to do a little quick story time. A few years ago, back in the summer of 2019, my friend Kevin and I, we flew out to Chicago for the 4th of July weekend, because, why not? And the Cubs were out of town, unfortunately, so we unfortunately had to go to a White Sox game, and that's how I got my first and only so far experience at Guaranteed Rate Field or whatever dumb name it wants to have. Dan, that ballpark in Chicago on the south side is easily the worst ballpark I have ever been in. And I have attended games at Dodger Stadium. I have attended games at the Oakland Coliseum. I even attended a Marlins game at Pro Player Stadium before they moved into the current Marlins Park or Lone Depot Park, whatever it's called now. All those ballparks I've been to, Guaranteed Rate Field, White Sox Stadium, easily the worst. There is nothing special about it. It's like a store brand ballpark. Like when you go to Safeway and there's there's bread and then there's the Safeway Select store brand bread that's a little bit cheaper, a little bit lower quality. That's basically what Rate Field is. It's like if Safeway had their own store brand ballparks, they just bought one of those and then added some pinwheels out in center field to try and give it some sort of flair. It's in the middle of nowhere. Imagine Pleasanton, but way worse.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, So for those who haven't been to Rate Field, it's like Pleasanton, but way worse. It's completely open, very exposed, no trees, and it's just sweltering as that heat beats down on you. And then, of course, I learned that they have a shower out in left field because this is the unique feature of Rate Field, and it's comical to me. There's a shower out in left field because it gets so stinking hot. Yeah. In the 70s, someone put a shower out there so you could cool down or whatever and wash the stank of White Sox baseball off of you. And I remember me and Kev were walking out through left field. We see this massive line of people for this shower. I'm like, I don't want to take a shower in a baseball park. This is stupid. It just, the whole ballpark, so unspecial, so unspectacular. Then you look at the wall where they keep all the championship pennants and stuff like that. And it's and 1959, that one time in the 80s, 2001 or 2005. It's just such a sad thing to look at. You might as well not even have the banners up there if you're going to have so few banners to display. It's just such a sad, unexciting ballpark to be at for a very sad, unexciting team to be a fan of. And they had that great year in 2021 where they clinched the division early in a terrible AL Central and just got obliterated by the Astros, I think, in the first round, and one of the most predictable first round sweeps you're ever going to see. I'll say, it's just not a fun place to enjoy a baseball game, Rate Field.
Well, I would say this, knowing a little bit about Chicago, is that, the Southsiders, they are hardcore fans, though. If you talk to someone from Chicago, they'll tell you immediately, and it all depends on where you're born, right? That town is split right down the middle. North side, Cubbies, South side, you're all about the Chicago White Sox. And yes, they're sort of what, it's their version of the Brooklyn Nets to that of the New York Knicks, the Los Angeles Clippers to that of the Los Angeles Lakers. They don't get nearly the sort of love like that of the Cubs. But hardcore White Sox fans will tell you, you go over there to the north side. You don't even know baseball. Go have your beers. It's just a cake party in the afternoon. It's all you yuppified people hanging out on the north side. The south side is for real baseball players. But you're right. And you know where the showers came from? That's Bill Veeck, their former colorful owner, by the way, who sent a midget to the plate. That's not political. A little person to the plate.
At the time, you can call him that.
Eddie, we'll look it up. Eddie Ledeck, I want to say his guy's name. The guy walked. Don't figure that strikes up. Anyways, I can't believe I went Edward. Sorry. But my point is that Bill Veeck put in those showers way back in the day. It sort of carried over. Well, let me just say this about the south side of Chicago and where that stadium's located. You're right. It may look like it's in the middle of nowhere, but it is somewhere. And you know where it is? It's in one of the most scariest, dangerous housing projects in all of the United States. And I know, because I was doing a live shot in the middle of the night out there after a White Sox game. Oh, no. And I heard these pops, and I remember I was using the satellite truck from our CBS affiliate out in Chicago, and they're like, those are gunshots. Because Cabrini Green, which is the legendary housing project right out there in the south side of Chicago, is a stone's throw from that stadium. You do not want to be out there on the north side in Rate Field in the middle of the night. I'm just forewarning everybody. If you have any summer plans to go out that way.
Yeah, I know. We made sure to go to a day game out there. Luckily, you got the train stop right there, so you can just hop on their L train and get right back into civilization. And I see the YouTube chat, me calling out Pleasanton. I said it's a worse version of Pleasanton. I just want everyone to know I very much enjoy the city of Pleasanton, but imagine what Pleasanton is now, but like 50 times worse. That's basically what the area around Rate Field in Chicago is like, and that is where the Giants were playing last night, where they took the 3-1 win over the White Sox. They will be game 2 of that series will be today. That will be at 1 o'clock first pitch. It'll be a 3 o'clock first pitch there out in Chicago. A very interesting time to start a game, and again, it's going to be another hot, humid day on the south side. Robbie Ray going against Adrian Hauser. But Daniel, we were talking about the lineup in the last segment here, and and how Matt Chapman's absence has impacted that. And last night again, I saw the lineup on Twitter, and the first thing I saw was again Yaz in the cleanup spot, and that's kind of we were talking about different roles guys have. And whenever I see a lineup like that, my first thought always goes to, because I'm just weird this way, this is the same franchise that once upon a time had Ray Durham, speaking of guys who used to play for the White Sox, in the cleanup spot on opening day of the 2006 season. The 2007 season. Ray Durham was in the cleanup spot, and everyone was just like, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense, because Durham had just hit 24 home runs the year before, had a career year. And, this is a team that once, would constantly miscast Benji Molina as the cleanup hitter. This is the organization that constantly miscast Buster Posey as a cleanup hitter. I mean, he was the Giants' best hitter for an entire decade, but that's just, he was never... Cleanup hitters are supposed to be bigger, more power, less average kind of guys, whereas Buster was more of a contact power, probably better suited for the 3-hole than the 4-hole, even though the Giants did have a lot of success with him in the 4-hole. But this all goes to say, it's just another chapter of the Giants finding someone else to miscast as a cleanup hitter. So that made me laugh. And yeah, what I'm seeing Bob Melvin doing with this lineup is he's riding the hot hand. He's not drawing names out of a hat. Who's swinging a hot bat right now? I need to put them in a spot in the lineup where that hot bat is going to do the most damage. And that's what Bob did last night, to the tune of Yaz going 0 for 3 with a couple strikeouts.
Give me your ideal lineup, theoretically, if this team is playing well offensively.
With Chapman healthy or not healthy?
Healthy.
With Chapman healthy. All right, so my ideal lineup that I would like to see, assuming everyone is hitting to their standards, is Jung-Hoo Lee leading off. Like to see Willie Adames in that 2 spot. Probably would like to see Ramos in the 3, Devers in the 4, Chapman 5, Flores batting 6, put him at first base. And then your final 3 hitters are probably a mix of, let's see, I would probably do Yaz 7th, Bailey 8th, and then Tyler Fitzgerald, assuming he's back in that 9 spot. If Fitzgerald isn't a part of that, honestly, I like Yastrzemski in that 9 spot, only because I love the idea of having a contact-heavy speedster in that 9-hole to add basically a secondary leadoff guy. And we've seen Yaz excel in the leadoff spot at times this season. And so, yeah, that would probably be the ideal lineup, is Lee, Adames, Ramos, Devers, Chapman, Flores, and then the final 3 of Yaz, Bailey, Fitzgerald. Maybe you're switching things around if Fitzgerald's not up, and you're putting Yaz in that 9 spot.
I mean, I think ideally you'd like to have Casey Schmidt in there instead of Fitzgerald.
Well, I guess that's true. If you want to put Casey Schmidt in that lineup, then I'm probably putting Schmidt 7th, Bailey 8th, and then Yaz in that 9-hole if you're going to have Casey Schmidt handling second base.
I'm wondering, we talk about the second base position, which obviously has been a struggle for Tyler Fitzgerald. We thought that this could be a breakout season for him. Did Giants give up on Tyro a little bit too soon? Were they a little premature on Tyro Estrada?
Tyro Estrada, who's
got bad with Colorado this year. He hasn't played. I mean, you can't start for Colorado. That's probably everything you need to know. But Tyro's numbers aren't bad. And I'm just curious. It can't get any worse than what it is we're witnessing with Fitzgerald and Christian Koss. But I will say, in Koss's defense, he almost was better over there at third base.
He had a really good throw. A couple good throws off third base the other day.
He's making a lot more contact.
It's tough for Koss right now because everyone's probably thinking about that night he had last Friday where he hit into every single double play known to man with the bases loaded and had a fielding error too. He had a rough night last Friday, and that happens. But Koss, he's a good utility guy. He can play kind of all the infield positions well enough to keep him, on a roster. By the way, Thairo Estrada this year, he is hitting 288 but that's in only 20 games though. So he's not been on the field enough for me to really miss him there. And what we saw from Fitz last year, I think, was enough to be like, you know what, I'm willing to buy in on this guy rather than keep it going with Thairo Estrada. I think the Giants milked everything they could have out of Thairo Estrada there.
So I do want to switch to pitching. And we can get back to position players and talk about this team's lack of it. Before we move on from the hitting, I looked this up the other day. You would think, if I was to tell you, with all the struggles and all the shows that people have done here at 95.7 The Game, and just whether it's YouTube or bloggers or vloggers, all these coconuts now, they got a live mic, and everybody's just ragging the Giants' offense. And rightfully so. They're right about the league average in terms of runs scored per game.
It's more of a knock on how much run scoring is happening around the league.
The Braves, the Astros, the Padres are all scoring less runs per game than that of San Francisco, which really doesn't make a lot of sense. But I do think you have to take into account that at the beginning of the season they were putting up some crooked numbers, getting into some double-digit games. But, San Francisco offensively, when you look at those numbers, you're like, okay, this is going to be an eyesore. And it's really sort of respectable, believe it or not.
So I'm looking at right now the league average. The Giants have scored 347 runs this year. They're in that looks about 16th, 17th in the league right now. Probably a little bit lower. There's no numbers on this ranking here. The league average is 357. So the Giants are slightly below average when it comes to scoring. When it comes to hitting, they're hitting 232 on the year, which is good for 23rd best in baseball. League average is 245. So scoring-wise, slightly below average. Hitting-wise, a little bit more so.
But would you ever think that if you didn't look that up? If I was to tell you off the cuff, they're about average in terms of runs scored, you'd be like, there's no way. This team scored if they score 7 runs in a game, it's a party.
I mean, if they could just score runs in a game, it's a party, plural, not, more than one. I mean, the 3 runs they got last night feel like a lot, but, Dan, this team does not score a ton, which is, I feel like that was almost by design with this team. I mean, what were the teams that Buster Posey found success on? 10, 12, 14. When we think about those teams, how many things do we think about what those teams did well before we get to the hitting? Those teams were built on the exact model that Buster Posey is going for this year, pitching and defense. The lineup basically just has to do enough to support that. It's why Giants baseball torture is a thing. It's why that a few years ago when Bruce Bochy, going into his last year as a Giants manager, said, we might have to win some 9-8 games this year. And Giants fans panic because, wait, you want this team to score 9 runs? Damn, when the White Sox scored yesterday, it's like, you're telling me this team has to score a whole run and then get another run on top of that just to take the lead? Runs are tough for this team, and that's just kind of how it is. I think part of it is the ballpark. Part of it is the Giants are playing to the strengths of the ballpark. This is not a power-hitting ballpark. This is a gap-to-gap hitting ballpark, which is why gap hitters always do well here. So, offensively, I get it, but I get the frustrations with it. Yes, they are below league average, but I feel like that's just kind of what Giants baseball is going to be, for the foreseeable future. I mean, Devers will change that a little bit. It's nice to have that bat there, but I'm not trying to make the excuse and saying this is just how it is, but I do feel like by design, this is just kind of the design that Giants teams are going to have, where it's the offense just doing enough, and then you're relying on that pitching, which the last couple weeks has been kind of in a rough patch.
Yeah, I think when you think about their first World Series win in 2010, that offense was similar to this one. I mean, that was a bad offense. if you really think about it.
It got very opportunistic down the stretch, especially August, September. This is weird, crazy to say this, but that team got very homer dependent in August and late September.
Cody Ross.
Pat Burrow was hitting them whenever you needed to. Buster Posey was coming through then. So that lineup had some pop, but again, just not a lineup known for a lot of scoring of runs.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with you that this is how you build a winner in San Francisco. And it's the reason, again, granted, that ball to Willie Adames, if you were to look at the metrics, wasn't coming off the bat in terms of its exit velocity. And it shouldn't have been a home run, but the optics being what they were, I think when you see that ball die on the track, and you see in the background that people are huddled together in front of a fire and a garbage can sitting in the bleachers in San Francisco, for crying out loud, it's July and people are in overcoats. That, in and of itself, that one, what could have been a walk-off grand slam home run for Willie Adames, to see that thing die on the track, is the reason why free agent hitters will not come here. And as a result, you have to build your team accordingly. So it's going to be timely hitting, just enough hitting. Your pitching better be damn good, and you got to play better defense than they have. And then your bullpen has got to be aces, which it has been. So I find it a bit interesting, while I agree with you that Buster Posey is getting back to that sort of architect in terms of building this team. But what sort of flies in the face of all of that is the trade for Rafi Devers. Because if that's sort of like your MO, wouldn't you have kept Kyle Harrison and rely on the pitching instead of going the route of trying to fix it with big offensive numbers?
Well, that's kind of a bit of the irony of the Devers trade, is that as soon as they trade him, the offense does get a little bit better on paper, but now that pitching has some concerns. We'll get into this on the other side here, Dan, because I know we're up against it. Mitch in New Jersey, I see you. We'll get you on the other side as well. But, Dan, usually when a team scores 5 runs, that's usually enough to win the game. And the Giants started off 23-3 in games in which they scored 5 or more runs. And the 7 games since then, though, starting with the walk-off loss in Colorado, the Giants are 2-5 in the last 7 games in which they scored 5 or more runs. And one of those losses, obviously, was the 11-5 loss to the Dodgers, where Casey Schmidt hit that 9th inning grand slam off Kike Hernandez to turn an 11-1 game into an 11-5 game. So you can put an asterisk on that if you want to. They're still, then in that case, they're still 2-4 in the last 6 games, minus that one, where this team has scored 5 or more runs. So they don't hit a lot, but the problem is now when they are hitting, they're kind of wasting that offense because the pitching has just really been going through it the last couple weeks here.
All right, we continue. I'm going to switch mics. I'm reading here that apparently got an echo going here on YouTube, so I'll switch out. Mitch, you hang tight. We're going to make some adjustments here. It's like the pit crew going to work as we pull over, do a little NASCAR. We're talking about the San Francisco Giants. We're going to switch it to pitching because I got some concerns, believe it or not, when it comes to that rotation. I want Sam's thoughts. We'll continue here with San Francisco Giant baseball talk on the Orange and Black weekend. Orange and Black, it sounds like there's got to be a burrito stand somewhere in San Francisco that's got to dedicate a borough in our name. Maybe
Orange and Black rap, I like it.
Orange and Black. The orange could be sweet potato. I eat that thing. We continue. Sam Love and Dan Avone right after this.
Are you curious about who offers the best deals on top-rated Samsung, LG, and Sony TVs? The answer is surprising. It's
Bailey to right field, sinking, and a dive and a miss by Noda. It's going to go to the wall. Adames rounds third. He'll score. Right behind him, Christian Koss. He'll score, and over to third, Patrick Bailey. The Giants take a 3-1 lead.
Now back to the best Giants talk in the Bay. The Orange and Black Weekend Wrap on 95.7 The Game.
Orange and Black Weekend Wrap continues
as the San Francisco Giants and the Palos, as they're known, the Chicago White Sox, continue their series from out in the Windy City. As the Giants try to make it 2 in a row, embarking on a difficult, long 10-game road trip. We mentioned this in the first half of the show. The Giants are in the midst of 16 consecutive games without a day off. Yeah, I mentioned the Orange and Black as being a potential burrito in our name. I don't know, La Taqueria, La Cumbre, which is a go-to spot, at least back in the day for me. Do you have a burrito of choice really quick there, Sam?
A burrito spot of choice. You know what?
What's a burrito? Are you a chicken guy?
Oh, I love a good carnitas burrito. And there's a truck right around the corner from my place down by the lake called Tacos Mi Rancho. That's kind of become my go-to of if I need a burrito. That's where I go to there. So yeah, that's my burrito spot.
Because I really want to get this going. I want somebody to make us the Orange and Black burrito wrap, all right? But what would for me, I'm good with the sweet potato. I know that probably there are people out there like, are you kidding me? Like, don't ever have another burrito, Dan, because you just disgraced the entire food. So what potentially could be the substitute for orange? If you're not going to go sweet potato, what sort of orange food would you put in a burrito?
In a burrito,
The black can be the black beans, right?
Yeah.
The black beans.
I'm trying to think, what's out there? What's out there? I guess. I mean, I don't know. I used to do the chicken, maybe like a
paprika sauce.
Yeah, but I think it's probably going for the sauce there, the spice. So you put a little like paprika in there, something like that. Some sort of. I guess I'd just say like an orange salsa, maybe. I don't know. I'm starting to realize I have a very low. I don't know a whole lot of orange foods. You know?
All right, well, there you go. We just solved it for you. A little paprika if it works in the burrito. All right? We'll wait for somebody to give us the call and tell us that it's on the menu, on the board, like Larry David. I want the Larry David sandwich. I want to walk into La Cumbre and see the orange and black wrap, and in parentheses, Dan Bone, Sam Lupton special. All right, let's get into the pitching. How's that for the segment?
Really quick, just want to... We're going to go to the phones just a sec, 'cause I got Mitch in New Jersey here. Shout out to everybody on YouTube. I know we have an echo or something that's going on.
Did we solve that?
I don't think we did. And unfortunately to those on YouTube, it's just Dan and I here this morning. That's why I'm back here behind the glass and Dan is driving in the studio. We are very short-handed this morning here at 95.7, but 2 people is really all you need to run a show. Unfortunately, though, there's no engineers here. There's just not a whole lot of options we have to kind of troubleshoot and fix the issue as to why we are getting an echo on YouTube right now. So I apologize to everyone who is listening on YouTube. Unfortunately, it's just we're going to have to kind of grin and bear it this morning. So do apologize on that because, again, it is just Dan and I this morning.
Really quick, Sam, but what is working is our text line, and somebody just came in with the answer. An habanero pepper.
Oh, duh. Well, all right.
Boom.
That's pretty bad that we would miss that. All right, shout out the text line there, and hopefully the people on the text line can hear us just fine over on the app and on their terrestrial radios that they are listening on here. Really quick before we dive back into the Giants pitching, because there's definitely some concerns there. Want to hear from one of our favorites, Mitch in New Jersey. Mitch, how you doing, man? You're on the wrap.
Doing well. Hope you guys likewise. Hope it's not too hot over there.
Oh, it's San Francisco, Mitch. It doesn't get hot here.
I was there like 30 years ago. I was there in May, and it was kind of cold. Funny. Strange, I would say. I wasn't prepared for it. But I want to say, it seems that we've been playing well, but we're like 16 behind. Anybody in the minor leagues, can we pull up a couple of trades? It doesn't have to be a big hit. I'm thinking of somebody like Michael Bush from the Cubs or Taglier. I think his name is Taglier from the Colorado. And, of course, a pitcher wouldn't hurt. You think they may move soon? And I just want to know your opinions, and thanks for taking my call.
Well, speaking of pitchers coming up, how about this kid Carson Seymour? don't know much about him other than, is that Carson Palmer? I mean, this dude is 6'5". Like, he looks like a hybrid tight end wide receiver / maybe a big quarterback. Like, this guy's got some dimensions behind him. I don't think he can pitch with a lick.
He had 3.89 ERA down in Sacramento over 74 innings, so he's pitching well enough there. One of the better pitchers there. Carson Whisenhunt could have been another option, though he's kind of struggling right now with a 4.64 ERA. Mason Black also with a 4.75 ERA over 72 innings pitched. And you got to think, Dan, it's with the pitching down in Sacramento, something that's kind of going to concern me now and more so deeper into the summer is the season that the River Cats are going through is not your typical minor league season because they are sharing, of course, with the A's who are playing in Sacramento this year. The Oakland A's forced out to Sacramento by John Fisher, who claims to have broken ground on a stadium in Las Vegas this past week. I'm still not fully sold that he's actually going to get it done, but because I was talking to Brett Wisely, I think I said this on the show last week, but I was talking to Brett Wisely last week and just asking me like, hey, what's going on down Sac? What's it like traveling this year? And he did talk about how there's a little bit of frustration there. I mean, the guys there, they're taking it as much as they can, and they're dealing with it as well as they can, much like you and I this morning here, just the two of us here being in the building, because at the end of the day, the situation could be non-ideal, Dan. That doesn't change the fact that you still got to come through and produce, and that's what we are doing, and that's what the River Cats are doing. But they were on the road for 18 games because half of that road trip was supposed to be a homestand, but the field needed a break at Sutter Health Park, so you can't send the A's on a road trip for a homestand. They're the big league team, so the River Cats unfortunately had to turn one of their homestands into a road trip there. The PCL is a notoriously hitter-friendly league, and it gets pretty hot out in Sacramento in the summer, and so I think that's why you're starting to see some of these ERAs here from guys like Whisenhunt, Black, and Seymour start to balloon up a little bit. Mason Black has got a 4.75 ERA, but he's also got a 2.06 batting average against, which is still pretty freaking good. So the ball's flying in over in AAA right now, so that's going to bloat these ERAs just a little bit. But yeah, that said, Carson Seymour did get the call up, and my guess is he's going to be a bullpen guy to start because the Giants do still have 5 starters. That could change, though, if things go south for one of these starters. And the guy I'm looking at right now is the guy who's set to pitch not today, Dan, but tomorrow for the Giants, and that is the 43-year-old future Hall of Famer, Justin Verlander.
I would also keep an eye on Birdsong, quite frankly, if you look at his last 2 outings. 7 earned his last time out. He's not fooling anybody. And so there's suddenly for the first time, there's a little concern on the back end of that rotation. And quite frankly, Logan Webb could be your Steiny Guru winner. And if you think about who's your most important players to get to the halfway point of the season, it's got to be Logan Webb. This guy is just, he's ridiculous. And he's really coming to his own. Like this is what happens when you get into your late 20s. Now, he's not a thrower, he's a pitcher, he's got it all. But once you get past Webb, Robbie Reyes, I don't think he's had a win in about a month. He went 7 innings, I want to say the last time against the Padres. So you need him to stretch his legs, as I like to say today. Again, you got to give that bullpen some relief when you're playing 10 consecutive games on the road, 16 straight games. But the rotation now, suddenly, you just move that one piece. You move Harrison out. And now suddenly it's like the focus becomes on Rupert. What's he going to be like in the dog days? Hell, I don't know. Has he pitched in pressure baseball? No. What about Eddie Birdsong? No idea. In fact, the wheels are beginning to come off of him a little bit. And then Verlander, who just has not been straight throughout the entire season. You talk about the age, 43. And there's suddenly, to me at least, there's more than just a subtle concern when you're talking about that starting rotation as we start the second half of the season.
Yeah, no, you mentioned Ray, who's going to be on the hill today. Again, 8-2 with a pretty good 2.83 ERA, which is still pretty good. But, Dan, a couple weeks ago, you mentioned the last 3 starts. He had a 2.44 ERA after beating the Padres earlier this month. And then the 3 starts since then, he gets a rough outing in Colorado, which, of course, name me a starting pitcher who hasn't had a rough outing in Colorado. It does happen from time to time. But he goes 4 innings there, gives up 4 runs. ERA balloons up to 2.55. Fast forward to the next start in Cleveland, goes 6 innings, against Cleveland at home, goes 6 innings, 3 runs there. Giants do not get the win because he took the loss there. And then last weekend against Boston, he goes 5 innings, gives up 4 runs there. Winless in those 3 starts, Dan. So, yeah, he was 8-1 at one point. Sorry, he was 8-0, 7-0 at one point, and he is 1-2 in his last 5 starts. So things are starting to slide in the opposite direction for Robbie Ray. And, I can't say I'm all that, shocked by it. A lot of Robbie Ray's success was built on the fact that he got a lot of great run support, and he wasn't getting burned for the walks that he was giving up. And when you got a guy who's getting a lot of run support, giving up a lot of walks, and has a very low batting average on balls in play, that just tells me, oh man, your luck is going to be running out at some point. Now, that being said, I still think Robbie Ray's an all-star. I think he will be in Atlanta for the all-star game in a couple weeks. And, he's still easily the number 2 pitcher on this staff. So this is a great get-right opportunity for Robbie Ray today. And they're going to need that because you can't win with just one great starting pitcher anymore, Dan. The days of Madison Bumgarnering your way through the playoffs to win a World Series are long gone. You need more than that. And so they're going to need Robbie Ray to be that guy and take advantage of the run support that he gets. And, he doesn't have to be in the Cy Young conversation. Just be in the conversation of who are the really, really good number 2 starters in the league. If you can do that, I'm set with whatever Robbie Ray gives at that point.
Do you think there's a scenario where, well, there's certainly a scenario, but what are the chances the Kyle Harrison deal comes back to haunt the Giants sooner rather than later?
I think it'll be, if that does happen, I think it'll be later rather than sooner. You know what? The Kyle Harrison career arc, what I think it's going to be very resemblant of is the Zach Wheeler career arc. And
don't say that.
Well, I don't know. How many Giants fans have ever regretted that trade? Would he be helpful now? Absolutely. But it took him several years to get to where he's at. And if Kyle Harrison, he's 22 right now, 22, 23 years old right now. If he is 5-6 years from now on a different team and just then starting to come into his own, I would not be shocked. Like the Red Sox, they immediately sent him down to AAA. They know he needs more seasoning. He needs more work because I think the Giants absolutely botched his overall development. So, yeah, could it come back to haunt the Giants? Maybe, but no more so than Giants fans regret the Zach Wheeler trade, which I don't think there's a Giants fan out there that regrets the Zach Wheeler trade at this point.
Yeah, the one thing about Kyle Harrison, and I don't want to get too detailed about the guy because he's obviously no longer here, he's a little different. Just when you see him pitch, he's a young pitcher like that at Birdsong, like that at Landon Root, but he obviously was a much higher prospect than the before-mentioned. But you can clearly see that there's, first of all, I love the way the dude was wired. Like that, he just had the makeup of a guy that's going to stick around for a while. But you just see the ball coming out of his hand. And for a guy from the left side of the bump that's throwing that hard with the 4-seam rise, like it's just a little different the way he pops the mid than some of the younger pitchers on the San Francisco Giants.
But that was kind of all he had, though, was the fastball.
No, he's got to develop something else.
And I think that's going to be the key that determines whether or not there will ever be any semblance of regret. That fastball's great, because, yeah, it does give a different look than most fastballs, but he's got to keep the velocity up. He had that issue last year with the ankle injury that, kind of dipped his velocity a little bit. It was down to 93, I believe, at some times last year. He got it back up to 95, but he needs other pitches. Let's look at a guy who's on the roster right now in Landon Root. He was a one-pitch guy last year. It was just that curveball. It was a really, really good curveball, but that's all he had. Why has Landon Root been so great this year for the Giants? It's because he's mixing in other pitches. He's not just a curveball guy. The curveball is his finishing pitch. Sure, he can use that to put you away, but he's also not afraid to use that sinker and that changeup to set up that curveball now. And being able to mix those two pitches in, to change the speeds up and get hitters off balance, and then drop in that curveball, That's why Landon Roop has taken that extra step. And that's why I think the Giants would be okay letting a guy like Kyle Harrison go in a trade more so than a guy like Landon Roop, because Roop has already completely surpassed Harrison in terms of his pitch mix development. And that's why you're seeing these results where, he gets into a little bit of trouble. And the White Sox, they attacked him hard out the gate last night. He never wavered, and he has got such great confidence in his 3 pitches right now that that's why he's showing why that is why I'm very excited to see what Landon Roop's going to do in this rotation this year and beyond. Again, though, he's going to be blown by his past innings career highs this year, so it'll be interesting to see how he holds up in the second half with all that going on.
Well, I think Buster Posey and the Giants are active at the trade deadline. They're going to be buyers, clearly. And now that they seem to have resolved a lot of their key issues, Casey Schmidt ideally, theoretically, moves over to second base, and you keep his bat in the lineup, although I think he's a natural third baseman defensively, but you'll take him over to second base. So that sort of takes care of one of the areas that you thought maybe just a few short weeks ago you were going to have to trade for. First base, Devers picks up a glove, him and Flores, Dom Smith, you're okay over there at first base, which obviously was a major concern with the hitting of the lack thereof early this year with Lamont Wade. I think that Pat Bailey's just, you're going to have to ride Pat Bailey. Again, it's because of his defense. It justifies the fact that this guy's been on the interstate the entire season. John Lewis has got to hit. I would tell John Lewis, I can't go out and get a center fielder. All right, we got you for the next 7 years. We're paying you way too much damn money. You've got to be able to hit. So I think offensively, the Giants are okay. My big concern, if I was the Giants, was if I'm going to get active at the deadline, say, I'm going for a veteran pitcher. I think that's got to be unique going forward.
No, absolutely. Because, again, I think as you're just saying, you're going to be having these guys like Birdsong and Roop. They're going to hit a wall at some point here in July or possibly into August. And then it comes down to the one, it's Justin Verlander is the X factor here. And he had a rough start on Tuesday against the Marlins. Well, not a rough. He gave up 3 runs in 5 innings, which for the most part, actually, that probably should be enough to get your team a chance to win. But this is the Giants offense we're talking about right here. They were only able to put up 2 runs that night. But, and Verlander said, here's what Verlander had to say after the game that night. And I kind of respect him for saying what he said here.
And that's on me. I haven't put us in good position, Obviously, there were a couple times early in the year, but you can't expect to get many wins when you go out there every time and, give up 3+ runs and don't go deep in the game. So, that's where I need to do better, for sure. I plan on it.
So that's what Verlander had to say, taking ownership of it, which I got to love that. Because he has every right to kind of be angry with his offense. I mean, this is a dude who's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. He wants to hit 300 wins. He's probably not. He's 38 wins shy at age 43. And unless he, goes to like the Dodgers or Padres, which, knock on wood that doesn't happen. That's concrete. I might have just jinxed it. He's probably not going to hit that 300 mark, which sucks because he's probably the last best chance we're going to see that happen for the foreseeable future. So how much you trust and believe in Justin Verlander to go out and get you 5 quality innings, because 5 innings, 3 runs, that should be enough. But for this team, you need to be a little bit better than that. And that's just the reality of it. And I don't know if we can really trust Justin Verlander to kind of come through in those situations and limit offense enough to give, or limit the opposing team's offense enough to give the Giants offense a chance to win games if the Giants offense is going to be, swinging bats like they are, which is to say not very good.
Yeah, if you're thinking about moving him to the bullpen, that's just not going to happen.
I don't see him as a bullpen guy. They did it with Randy Johnson in 2009, so, I mean, it's not unprecedented.
I don't think Verlander's going to the bullpen.
And I got to say, instant 1495 here in the YouTube chat hits it nail on the head. He has a better chance to hit 300 coming out of the bullpen because that's who gets the decisions these days is relievers.
Yeah, I just don't. Verlander is just too proud. You're talking about future. He's not only is he a Hall of Famer, Cy Young. When you look at this dude's resume, Verlander And Kate Upton won't let him go to the bullpen. Like, there's certain dudes who just don't go to the bullpen.
Is she going to show up to the ballpark at all this year?
Maybe
I
that's
understand
why
why she was absent, obviously, with the birth of their child. Shout out to the young Verlander, Bellamy Brooks Verlander. So shout out to him. Hopefully he'll be slinging 98-mile-an-hour fastballs for the Giants someday, some 20-something years from now.
Good-looking kid. How can you not be?
Oh, yeah, he's got two of the best-looking parents on the... Well, it's either he's going to be one of the best-looking kids ever, or, like, the attractiveness of the parents are going to cancel out, and that would really be unfortunate.
Does that happen?
I don't know.
Can you cite an example?
I'm sure some people would say, look at your parents and then me, or something like that. I don't know, but...
I wasn't going there.
Oh, no, that's why I went there. I'm sure it's the easiest one to go with.
Yeah, I think that he is a key. You just because if he can give you something, that's the veteran moxie that you're looking for. Logan Webb, you feel good about, but if there's just one other guy who can just say, "Oh, I feel good every 5 days," especially when we get into August, and if you're going, neck and neck with Milwaukee, which by the way, look out for the Brew Crew. When we talk about pitchers, they got this kid Mirakowski, I believe his name.
Yeah, didn't he just made his debut against Paul Skeens the other day, didn't he?
Well, when you talk about the new Paul Skeens, keep an eye on this guy. I think he went, no. It was his second outing, and he went head-to-head with Skeens. And he taught him a thing or two, but Milwaukee now is just, and they always do this, right? I mean, here comes this team that has a bunch of players that everybody sort of overlooks, and it's that pitching. And they got this kid Mirakowski, but when you think about, you just need that one veteran on this giant staff, not named Logan Webb, that sort of makes you feel good about things. Because right now, it's a bit tenuous, man. I dare anybody out there to tell me that you feel comfortable with the staff going forward when you get into games and you're trying to hold off Philadelphia, the Cardinals, who knows, Cincinnati, making a push, the Brewers. You're getting in the thick of things, the Padres. And pitching gets, obviously, it becomes so centric in the latter part of the season when you get into these races to procure a wild card spot. And I don't know. Is Landon Root going to be that guy? Hayden Birdsong?
It's just such a big ask for such young arms to hold up through the entire year. Again, I'm trying to think, who could be a guy that the Giants could look into going after, who could fill that starter. Because really what you're looking for, Dan, is you're probably looking for a 3 or a 4 starter. That's probably what you're looking, which is good because those guys are a little bit cheaper and a little bit easier to come by than your top of the rotation guys. So I'm not going to try and go down a rabbit hole and read off names.
Are the Marlins ready to move off of Alcantara?
Well, he's good. He's supposed to be the big prize at the trade deadline, and he's sporting a 6.69 ERA right now, or something like that. Like, he has been just. If first off, any team that gets Alcantara, you're going to get him for stupid cheap. So like you got a low price that you'll have to pay there, and I feel like with a low price comes a low risk. Whereas, if it goes south, whatever, you can just take him out of the rotation. You didn't give up enough to make you want to hold on to him and force it. But at the same time, though, if that's like, let's just get Alcantara and see if that works, I don't know if that's a safe bet either. I'm looking at random names right now. A name that just stuck out to me down in Anaheim is UC Kikuchi with the Angels. He's 3-6 with a 2.97 ERA right now. For an Angels team that is stuck in the mud going absolutely nowhere. That's the first name that I look at. But again, that's probably more top of the line. I know I said 3-4 starter. That's probably more 2-3 starter. But those are kind of like the bigger names that I would be looking into if I'm the Giants. But at the same time, like, you also got to think about your future. And you don't want to deplete your farm system too much. And that being said, anyone outside of Bryce Eldridge should be on the table for the Giants in this farm system.
By the way, we're doing a Bryce check. Bit of a setback.
We don't have a Bryce check because, unfortunately, Steven Risotto is in parts unknown right now.
Well, why don't you detail Bryce and what happened this past week when we come back? We don't necessarily have to be the official Bryce check, but I'm sure you.
Well, yeah, the Bryce check actually is pretty simple. He's on IL, or he's on the IR right now, or IL with a hamstring strain, and hasn't done squat this week. So I guess there you go. There's your Bryce check. That I did there for Steven Risotto.
Before we get to the break, somebody also mentioned cheddar cheese could be the orange in our orange and black weekend sports wrap. Yeah, well, All right. Well, we're still looking. I want that burrito made. Somebody put it on your menu. We continue here on 95.7 The Game, the Orange and Black Weekend Sports Wrap. We're going to talk. We still haven't done this. Let's do a report card in the first half of the season.
Let's do that. Yeah, exactly. And then also, before we get out of here, Dan, Larry Bear said something on the Morning Roast this week that went viral across the country. I want to revisit that as well on the wrap.
All right. We'll be back right after this.
Oh, how's your research going?
Surprising.
Giants talk in the Bay on 95.7 The Game.
It's Sam Logan, it's Dan Malone on a Saturday getting you ready for the White Sox and the Giants. Will continue their series out in Chicago. The Giants in the midst of a 10-game road and in the midst of playing 16 consecutive games without a day off. You know, Sam, here in the studio, I'm watching the A's and the Yankees play a baseball game from, of course, Yankee Stadium, the historic Yankee Stadium. To think that you have one team that plays at home at Yankee Stadium, and then their opponent plays home games at a place called Sutter Health. Like, what the hell's going on here? What's wrong with this picture? Why is Sutter Health actually a ballpark in Major League Baseball these days?
You see, Luis Severino, he was interviewed by The Athletic, or he said The Athletic, he probably said to some other people as well. He just went in on how much he hates pitching at Sutter Health. I think he's 0-7 with like an 8-something ERA at Sutter Health, and he's 2-0 with like a 2-something ERA away. And he just said like the most obvious part out loud. It's because on the road we're playing in a big league ballpark, whereas in Sacramento we're not. Because, you know, you got the clubhouse out in left field, which means the pitchers can't go to the clubhouse during games, in between innings, which they like to do. There's no air conditioning out there. You're just baking in the hot sun. It's, you know, it's just not ideal conditions for a pitcher to pitch in. And, you know, I feel bad for the guy. I feel bad for all those players, not just on the A's, but on the Sacramento River Cats as well, who have to deal with this nonsense brought about by John Fisher and his just inability to run a baseball team. You know, it happens, but on the flip side, you know, you still gotta come through, much like you and I are this morning here with just the two of us here in this undermanned station. And again, shout out to everyone who's listening on YouTube. I know the audio is having issues this morning. I wish I had a solution for it. The minimal amount of tech knowledge that I have, I put it to good use, and it was not of good use, actually. So shout out to all those who are bearing through it and listening to it with us with the echo issues that we're having. Unfortunately, it's just the situation we have this morning, and we're going to power through it because that is what professionals do, Dan. And that is what we're doing this morning here on the Orange Black Weekend Wrap.
I can keep going around the studio like Goldilocks and try and find the right...
Well, then I got to go and do the cameras, too, because we got this whole new camera system that we set up as well that just adds to it. And honestly, there's a part of me that's just like, do we need to do YouTube today? But you know what? We give the people what they want. What the people want is a little bit of YouTube.
So really quick, before we move off on the A's, you know who David Sampson is? He has his own YouTube channel.
I'm very well aware of who David Sampson is. He is a quasi-regular on the Morning Roast show.
Oh, he is?
Yes, we basically every episode that Sampson does gets repeated by Shasky the next day on the Morning Roast. So that's basically where that. So yes, I do know who David Sampson is.
And you know how he refers to the Oakland A's as the Oakland A's. So I just thought I'd leave it at that.
Oh, of course.
Let's get into the San Francisco Giants, as we have reached officially the midway point. So just take us soup to nuts, alphabetically if you want. Just go through this lineup and let's sort of grade these guys.
Yeah,
A being the best. Or do you want to do a 1 to 10 scale?
I like a grading thing, and I like a little music when we do this too, Dan. Get a little Pennant fever going here from the movie Major League, my favorite baseball movie of all time. So yeah, let's have some fun with this. Let's just go up and down the roster and just give our quick grades. And I want the people on the YouTube chat to chime in as well. I'm going to say a name, throw out a grade. And if your grade is worth reading, I'll throw it in there. Unfortunately, you know what? I'll even play the music for YouTube today. We usually don't play the music for YouTube because we don't want to demonetize the stream. But you know what? If we really lose money, I'll pay the $4.83 that we lost by demonetizing it today. So, YouTube chat, I'm getting you guys involved in here. I want to hear your grades. I'm going to go up and down the roster. I'm going to say a name. You give me a grade. Very simple. Starting off with... I want to start off with a good one here. Start with our usual leadoff hitter, but he was the cleanup guy last night. Mike Yastrzemski. What's the grade you're giving Mike Yastrzemski, Dan?
I'll give him a solid C.
Solid C, okay. I think I would go in the B- area because he's been streaky this year, which you kind of expect out of Yaz. He is a streaky hitter, but at the end of the day, he's still giving you the exact production that I think you expect from him. You would like a little bit more, but you know it could be a little bit worse. So I'm going to go B- there for Mike Yastrzemski. And then let's see, go the chat. Instant 1495 going C+. Kep HD is also going to go with a B- there for Yaz. So let's keep this going with, all right, why not? Patrick Bailey, the hero of last night's game, who had this big hit.
Bailey to right field, sinking, and a dive and a miss by Noda. It's going to go to the wall. Adames rounds third. He'll score. Right behind him, Christian Koss. He'll score, and over to third, Patrick Bailey. The Giants take a 3-1 lead.
That sounds so much cooler with the music bed underneath it. But yeah, Patrick Bailey, that hit last night, that one hit, that one at-bat was A+. But we're not doing that one at-bat, Dan. They're doing the whole season. Patrick Bailey, what grade is he getting?
I'm going to go C+.
Wow, that high. I'm giving him a D. It's just, I need more at the plate. It's hard for me to give Bailey a good grade when he's still on the interstate like he has. Again, you have to go back to April 11th in New York against the Yankees, where the A's are right now. This was the last time that Patrick Bailey with a batting average above 200. Mishler in the chat, yeah, C+, Hunkin SF, D+, a lot of D's and C's for Patrick.
Is this like Dave Portnoy's pizza review? Can I take back? I can't take back my
take back the grade. Listen, okay. Whatever we do to make it not like Dave Portnoy, we could do it like that. I want to be the exact opposite of that guy.
I'll stay locked in with my, what did I give him, a C+?
Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
I put an emphasis on defense. I think I told you this before, that I'm old school, that I'm willing to sacrifice the catcher position for defense. Although the offense, granted, needs to be a little bit better than this.
Actually, I think Jason Mishler in the chat, I think he had the best one right here. B for catching, D for hitting. And I'll still take Patrick Bailey's
hitting. Down to the C.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And I'd take Patrick Bailey's hitting over anything Dave Portnoy. I don't know if I want to go down this one. Well, why not? Willie Adames. Oh, boy. What do we got?
Well, I'm going to surprise you by giving you, I'm going to say he's sort of a B- C+.
Really? Well, yeah. Why so high there?
Well, the reason why it's so high is because everything else that he's done. I really do believe, and I know it's one of those intangibles, and what the hell does that mean at the end of the day? His personality and his presence really means something on this team. And I do think it's translated to wins. I'm a big locker room guy. If you get it right there, there's a cause and effect with wins and losses. And he is really good, whether it's welcoming in Rocky Devers or just in the midst of all the struggles, being a positive guy, a positive influence in that growing sort of Latin community on this baseball team, which I love to see. He keeps that whole thing together, man. And there's more than that. Now, I know you're saying, well, just hit the damn baseball at the end of the day. We're giving you 26 per, right, for the next 7 years. Fair enough. Yeah, I do think he will hit at some point, and I am taking into account the last 15 games. So, you know, he's hitting a little bit, but I'm just a Devers guy, and the defense has also got much better.
Yeah, so let's say here, I'm looking at the YouTube chat. Yeah, a lot of C's and D's for Adames. I think it's very easy to look at what Adames is doing and give him a D or something lower than that. I'm going to go a little bit more friendly here. I'm going to give him a C, C-, somewhere in that area, because I do believe the intangibles are meaning a lot. Had Larry Bear on the Morning Roast last month. And, well, you know what? Here's what Larry Bear had to say about what they've learned about Adames and why they value him so much.
He's a culture carrier. That's what we call it, culture carrier. What does that mean? It means that his enthusiasm, his team-oriented approach creates a culture, helps create a culture, helps change a culture if that is what was needed, etc. And is super valuable beyond what the statistics say. That has absolutely been the case. He's a winning player. You know, that's just sort of the way we felt about him before we signed him, and that's what, so far, you know, first 50 games, that's the way it's turned out.
So, again, he mentioned that big word, the culture care, change the culture when that's needed. The Giants needed a cultural shift in this organization by flushing Farhan out, bringing Buster in, and Willie was part of setting that new culture. And it is a different tone in that clubhouse, and Willie Adames is a big part of that. And how you quantify that for wins, losses, I don't really know that. There is no stat for that. I will say, though, he is hitting .228 so far in the month of June. So that technically means he's hitting a little bit better, I guess. So moving on here, I'm going to do a two for here because I feel like it's very easy. Matt Chapman and Elliot Ramos. Is there any
A's.
reason to give them less than an A?
No, solid A's.
Both A's. Elliot Ramos, I expect him to be an all-star next month. It's going to be tough, though. That outfield, there is a lot of good options to be in the outfield for the all-star team this year. The fact that Teoscar Hernandez right now is in the top 3 of voting kind of worries me because I think that Ramos has had a better season than Teoscar Hernandez, all things being equal. But Hernandez is a star. He's one of the big players in the league, and he's going to get voted in as a starter. And that could be like one of those in college basketball. You have the bubble watch. When a team that shouldn't be in the tournament gets an automatic bid that pops a team's bubble somewhere else. I feel like it's similar there. If Hernandez gets that starting spot, Ramos's bubble case gets a little bit. I'm not saying that Ramos should be on the bubble. It's just the depth of outfield talent in the National League this year is just so insane that there's going to be some guys left out who shouldn't be left out. And I am very worried that Ramos could be one of those guys. Hopefully, I am wrong.
And the Dodgers have another one in Pages who...
Andy Pages is also going to sneak in there. The Cubs have 2 guys, and PCA and Kyle Tucker. Fernando Tatis Jr., he'll be in the mix. Juan Soto's going to be in the mix. James Wood, the outfielder in Washington. Kyle Stowers, I think, who is the left-handed hitting outfielder for the Marlins who hit that mammoth home run against Bullseye. Is he a Stanford guy?
Yeah.
Oh, God, I knew I didn't like him.
The one thing I would say about Elliot Ramos, it's an A. It's an A, but I'm leaning towards A- because the defense could be better.
The defense could be better, but sometimes it is better, and then it isn't. It's very up and down with him. He's got a low-key good arm, though, Elliot Ramos. Do not.
He had P to second base and thrown out. Who's that guy? He threw somebody out at second base.
Somebody during the Marlins. I forget the name who we got, but yeah, he's got a bit of an arm. So moving on, Casey Schmidt. What kind of a grade are we going to give Casey Schmidt, who, again, I believe he started off in the minors this year. He's been bumping around the infield. Finally seems to be finding his place in the absence of Matt Chapman.
I'm going to give a solid B.
I'm going to go B as well. He's doing, he's filling in, I think, admirably. I always say, Casey Schmidt's not all that different from a backup quarterback. He's the Mac Jones to Matt Chapman's Brock Purdy. In that if Brock goes down, can Mac get a split? And I think Casey Schmidt, he's doing a good enough job of the equivalent of getting a split for Matt Chapman's absence here. Let's move to the bench. Actually, no, before we go to the bench, Jung-Hoo Lee. Where are we at on Jung-Hoo Lee on grading?
Well, I'll go A- at the beginning of the season, and he has been a D since, so I'm going low C-.
I think C probably for Lee because the defense is still really good. The defense is much better than it was last year. He knows where the walls are, which is a big improvement there. But yeah, the start of the season had, like Dan, a month ago, I thought that Jung-Hoo Lee was going to be one of the Giants All-Stars. Like he looked like a lock to make the All-Star game in mid-May, and he is going to be as far away from the All-Star game as you could possibly be now at this point.
I think he dipped below 250 the other night.
Yeah, I think he's at 248 now, and it's just like I said, he's in 162 for the month of June, a 170 BABIP this month, so a little bit of bad luck. But again, I think part of that is just his approach at the plate has gone in the absolute dumpster, and that's going to have to change. He's a guy who, again, if he came up through the minor leagues and didn't have the contract that he had right now, I kind of think that he would be in AAA right now, working on his swing. That's kind of, which is crazy to say, considering where he was. I feel like this could be another easy grade. Wilmer Flores.
He's a solid A.
Solid, absolutely. He is low-key the team MVP this year. If he's not the MVP, he's the MDP, as in the most dependable player, which when Matt Williams got Jung-Hoo Lee thrown out the plate the other night on what would have been the winning run, I believe Flores was right there on deck. I got that wrong. That was Tuesday night. Flores was on deck when Devers was thrown out at home plate. I didn't understand what Matt Williams was doing there. When you got your most dependable hitter coming up the plate next, you don't need to send the guy there, and you ran yourself out of an inning.
He's just being overly aggressive because his team can't score runs.
Yeah. Wilmer Flores, though, who's on a pretty bit of a cold streak. He was hitting around 210 this month going into last night's game. And, of course, then he gets the big double in the third inning to kind of get the Giants on the board. And then he made some pretty good defensive plays, too, at first base, which defense is supposed to be the hole in his game. But hopefully he gets better at first base. You saw a little bit last night because he's probably going to have to be playing a lot more first base the rest of the year because I'm not really in on Rafael Devers playing first base. And speaking of Rafael Devers, it's been a little over a week. How are we grading his Giants tenure so far?
Give it a solid B, leaning toward a B.
Yeah, I'd say a B as well. B plus, because really just his presence alone makes me happier about this team and this team's future. And again, it's a big transition he's gone through. It's a much different ballpark than he's used to. He already got one home run at this ballpark that would have been off the monster already. So I think that the more Devers gets comfortable with this lineup, it's going to happen. He is going to go on a tear in the second half. And again, if Giants fans, they want to start stuffing the ballots, he is on the DH list now for the National League. Well, of course, I know it's going to be pretty impossible to take over Shohei Ohtani. I'm pretty sure Rob Manfred would fudge the voting totals there. But let's see if we can get Rafael Devers to represent the Giants in the All-Star game. How cool would that be?
Do you have an issue with young players being DHs? I mean, if they're marginally defensive players...
Well, that's kind of why. That's kind of what the DH is for now, is to give these marginally
but
defensive
a lot of
players a
people feel
chance.
as though it's an older player's position. It's someplace you stick Chili Davis in his waning years. I have no issue if a guy can hit that he becomes an everyday DH, and he's a young baseball player.
No, I have no issue with it either. Again, if that's what's best for the lineup, that's what's best for the lineup. And what's great for the Giants is they have a set DH now for the next 8 years, which gives more structure to their lineup. So, yeah, I have no issue with it.
I think you and I are both on the same page that theoretically the Giants are a better baseball team when Flores is more of a spot starter, role player, bench guy. If he's your number, well, maybe you're not on the same page with me, but I think if he's your number 3 or 4 guy and you're this relying on him to give you power statistics, it's not where you want to be offensively.
No, I agree with that. But at the same time, Wilmer Flores has been coming. He just continues to keep coming through. He's doing it. He's defying all the odds as he's doing it. I feel like we're constantly waiting for the other foot to drop and him just to, fall back to earth and, be the hitter he was last year. I don't think that's going to happen. He's going to do it in a way that kind of defies how offense is done this year. He's doing it with soft contact. He's doing it with really long approaches. He's not that aggressive at the plate. He's letting the game come to him, and that's why he's been such a consistent force for the Giants this year. And it's crazy to think, but where would the Giants be without Wilmer Flores this year?
That says a lot about
But again,
his team.
he worked at the DH. We'll see how he handles the strain of being an everyday first baseman as the season goes along. Let's go to the pitching rotation now, and Logan Webb, Robbie Ray. I'm gonna pair those two together because again, I feel like that's an easy. I'm giving them both A's. A's for aces, because that's what they are.
Well, the A obviously for Logan Webb. A plus, if you will. I can't go A for Robbie Ray. Tremendous start, but you do have to take into account the last month and a half, do you not? So he's sort of like B plus range for me. Sort of in the B category.
Yeah, go 7 shutout today, and it's an easy A there. By the way, going to the chat. Yeah, YouTube chat agrees. Wilmer Flores, lots of A's. Jung-Hoo Lee gets a C from Lincoln Schumann. Instant 1495 is also giving Jung-Hoo Lee a C. He's also giving Webb and Ray A's as well. Chips and Salsa, sorry you were a little late. We can't fix the echo. We're short-staffed. We don't have any engineers. We're just going to have to... much like the A's at Sutter Health Park in unfriendly conditions, we're just going to have to soldier through it today. Unfortunately, I got nothing better for you there. I do apologize to all of our friends on YouTube, brought to you by First Corps NorCal Credit Union. How about last night's starter, Landon Roop? What kind of a grade are you giving him, Dan?
I'll go A- with Landon Roop.
I'm right there with you. I'm going to give him an A-. I think he's giving you everything you could have possibly wanted and more for a young starter. And no need to apologize there, Chips and Salsa. You were late to the show. It's all good. Hayden Birdsong. This is an interesting one. I think a couple weeks ago, the grade would have been one thing. Now, grade might be something different.
Yeah, I think he's hanging on to a B-, and he's shaking hands with a C pretty quickly.
I'd say B right now. I think he's just going through growing pains. This is what happens with a young starter. He is really struggling with the lefties, though. I did not like that they made him get into the beanball war on Thursday, where he punked Otto Lopez, the Marlins 3-hitter. And then 2 batters later, Kyle Stowers comes to the plate and hits an absolute tank out into the 4-1-5 section. And again, he struggles against the lefties. Stowers stepped into the plate, and I was like, uh-oh, I got a bad feeling about this one. And what do you know? A bad feeling was had indeed. Justin Verlander. What are we on? He's going to be Sunday starter. What's his grade?
D.
Yeah, I'd probably say C- because he's pitched better than the numbers indicate. The problem with Justin Verlander, it's always just one inning that sinks him every start. And sometimes the Giants are able to overcome that. Most times they're not. It's just crazy that he is still yet to get a win this season. Let's go into the bullpen here. And Camilo Doval.
I'll give Duvall an A-.
Really? I think I'm going to go with a B here because it's just too many times he's starting innings off with walks. Like, I've kind of come to peace with the holding runners on issue, which I don't like that I came to peace with it, but he needs to get ahead in counts. He needs to get the first out. He can't be pitching with as much traffic as he's been giving up. So that's where I'm at on that one. Let's do another group here, and this is an easy one. Eric Miller, Randy Rodriguez, Tyler Rogers. Do any of those three get anything less than an A?
No, not at all.
Yeah, those are 3 A's right there who play for the Giants. Hunk and SF giving Doval a B+, instant $14.95. Going an A- for Doval. He's giving an F to Verlander. So he is very much out on Justin Verlander here. Ryan Walker.
Ryan Walker, I'll give a solid B. B-.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, I'd probably go into C+ with Ryan Walker. And I say that as a big fan of Ryan Walker. I've gotten many an argument with the Butcher Boy in the mornings before shows about Ryan Walker. I still believe in him. Listen, relievers are fickle. They really are. There was a time when Sergio Romo, it took him a couple years to really kind of find his groove as a reliever. Jeremy Affeldt, I remember in 2010, was very unreliable for the Giants during the regular season before figuring out in the postseason. Santiago Garcia had his fair share of ups and downs, and those are 3 of the greatest relievers in San Francisco Giants history. So relievers can be fickle. Remember in 2022, half the city wanted to run Tyler Rogers out of town because they thought that he was cooked. And no one's saying that now. So I'm not giving up on Ryan Walker, but I need him to pick things up here going forward because my trust in him is a little bit shaken, especially on the road. He is not very good on the road and need that to get better because, as Instant is saying, Ryan Walker was lights out last season. So those are our grades. I want to get into a little bit of grading of Bob Melvin on the other side, Dan, and then how Larry Bear made this station go viral. We'll get on that on the other side as well.
All right, we'll continue here on 95.7 Game. A little Bob Melvin, as well as, well, let's just let it out of the bag. Barry Bonds is going to creep into the conversation. I know you don't want to miss that. We'll continue here on the, what do we get for the... It's the oranges. What do we go with? Not paprika.
Well, the orange. I thought there was the cheese. There was the habanero. That's what it was. The cheese.
The habanero Black Sports Wrap here on 95.7 The Game. We'll be back to wrap up the show after this.
Hey, it's Willard and Steiny for New Vodka. That's N-U-E Vodka. Come on, Bay Area. You know what time it is. It's time to unwind.
Now back to the best Giants talk in the Bay. The Orange and Black Weekend Wrap on 95.7 The Game.
And we have hit the home stretch, taking you right up until noon as we recap the first half of the season as the Giants get ready for the Chicago White Sox in Game 2 of their series. This afternoon, the Giants in the midst of a 10-game road trip. They are now 8 games over 500. Let's just start right there, Sam. If I was to tell you everything you knew about this team over the offseason, going back to last year, and if you didn't see them play a game, and I was to tell you at the midway point, they would be 8 games over 500, very much in the playoff hunt, and you have Rocky Devers for the second half of the season. What would your take be?
Oh, you're taking that in a heartbeat. You're absolutely taking that in a heartbeat. If you go back to opening day and said halfway through the year, you're 8 games over 500 in the thick of the wild card race, Logan Webb's dealing, and you got your dude for the future locked up without having to give up Bryce Eldridge, like, yeah, that's A+. Like, the Giants have absolutely exceeded expectations. Whatever expectations Giants fans had at the beginning of the year, there's no way those expectations have not already been met. And that's partly because, the team was in such a not great place, and I think that kind of ramps up the expectations for the second half of the year. And that kind of gets us into the conversation that I think we can have about grading Bob Melvin in the year that he's had. Because I think Bob's done a pretty good job this year. I think there's times where things could have been a little bit better. But overall, yeah, I give Bob probably an A- for the season he's had this year as manager of the Giants. It's, not always been perfect with injuries and guys not performing as much as they have. But, he's kept the train on the tracks. And he has instilled a great culture. And, he talks about this a lot. These guys, they believe in themselves late in games. And he has fostered that belief. So, it's been a very good year for Bob Melvin so far.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm right around A-, B+. He's the veteran leader. He's the steady hand. A little dry for me. I've always said this, and it shouldn't have anything to do in terms of him being effective as a manager. Just, bro, get a personality at some point. But we love Bob Melvin, a former Cal catcher, local product. But Bob Melvin has been, for everything that's gone wrong with this team, you just can't put on Bob Melvin. Right? I mean, when it comes to hitting, he's tried to piece this thing together. Are we done with Bob Melvin? Can we say
we can keep going with Bob here, just because I do think that, again, yeah, Bob's had some moments here or there, or a pitching change I didn't like, a bullpen decision that went south. You're going to have that for every manager, so I'm not going to shake a stick too much at that. I have no real qualms about Bob Melvin's job in the first 82 games of the season, but in the next 80 games that the Giants are going to play, though, I do believe that the pressure is going to ramp up on this team. The expectations are going to ramp up on this team. On opening day, again, you say halfway through the year, you're above 500. You're like, awesome, I'm taking that. But the next thing you're saying is, well, now you want to make the playoffs. And that's where I think the expectations go to the next level. I think at the start of this season, if you said that the Giants weren't going to make the playoffs, no one would be happy about that. No one would be like, oh, I'll take that. But I don't think anyone would be shocked either. Now the Giants are at a point where it's just like, they should be in the playoffs. They absolutely should be in the playoffs with the roster that they have, with the pitching that they have, with the coaching that they have. This team has everything that a baseball team should have to have a playoff resume. And I fully expect them to be one of these 6 teams, in the National League playoffs when this season ends, probably as a wild card spot, which is totally fine, because I'm just make the playoffs. Just make the playoffs. I don't care really what they do in the playoffs at that point. Everything they do after that is just extra credit. Obviously, I'd like them to go on a deep run, but if they make the wild card round and get knocked out in that wild card round, my takeaway would be, you know what? They set themselves up well for next season. And so I got to give credit to Bob Melvin there. But yeah, no, I do think I look at Bob now like, I need you to get this team to the playoffs now, dude.
Yeah, expectations change. And when you were at the beginning of the season, before you threw the first pitch, you would just be satisfied for a team that was competitive. Well, now that we're here, to me, it's playoffs or bust. Like, this team has to get to the postseason. And if they don't, it's a disappointment. It's a disappointing year. I don't look at things collectively and say, well, if you're thinking about it at the beginning of the year, you would have taken a team that was competitive down the stretch because nobody was expecting that. And they've been one of the pleasant surprises in Major League Baseball. It doesn't work that way. If you are where you're at right now, you've got to get to the postseason. And I'm a little different than you in that when it comes to Major League Baseball, I would not settle for a wild card and saying, okay, we have things to look forward to next year. I'm more of a here and now guy, and especially when it comes to baseball. If you can get your card punched to the dance, when you shrink rotations, you sort of nullify what used to be the Dodgers' dominance because they have so many injuries, you even the playing field, and things can happen. We talked about Arizona and the disappointment they've had this year. But if you get into the postseason, it's been proven time and time again that it's those teams that catch fire for 3 weeks during that tournament, and you can win the damn thing. So it's not like the NFL where things usually, you don't see that much parity. Same with the NBA. Occasionally you'll have a surprise, but typically things go according to plan, not Major League Baseball. So, Giants, if you get there, you got a shot. You got to punch your shot.
Absolutely. Now, you said playoffs or bust. I'm curious because at this station a couple years ago, everyone was saying, Super Bowl or bust. And I kind of pushed back on that because, I push back because of what my definition of bust means. And I'm kind of curious for you, Dan. Playoffs, we know what that means. It means making the playoffs. What does bust look like for you? So just disappointment.
Yeah.
See, when I think bust, I think heads roll. Like, people lose jobs. Like, when everyone's saying the Niners, Super Bowl or bust, that means if they don't win the Super Bowl, this thing's going to break apart and fall apart, which is ended up what happening. So when I say Giants playoffs or bust,
I guess there's varying degrees of bust.
I guess I have maybe more of a harsher definition of it. But yeah, because if I'm thinking of bust, like things have to change. If it's playoffs or bust, and the busting is
Posey sells his job if they don't go to the playoffs, and I don't think Bob Melvin's going anywhere if they don't make the playoffs.
Well, so here's a thing I want to throw at you, Dan, when it comes to Bob Melvin's job security. And this isn't off. I'm gonna say at the top. Not trying to say Bob Melvin needs to go, but the Giants don't make the playoffs this year with this roster because I think this roster is good enough to make the playoffs. When you have a team that is good enough to make the playoffs, then I think it becomes more incumbent on the manager, head coach, what have you, to guide that team of talent to the playoffs. Like, that's part of what managers are for. But if the Giants don't make the playoffs, and there's another team in the AL West, the Texas Rangers, if they don't make the playoffs, the Texas Rangers, and they have had one good season in the last 7 or 8, and people can already probably tell where I'm going with this. That 1 year was the Bruce Bochy World Series year. It's been pretty rough going since then. The Rangers are a team that's aging in the wrong direction. They're trending in the wrong direction. A part of me has to think, if things go south in Arlington, if Bruce Bochy wants out of the Rangers and the Giants don't make the playoffs this year, is it so hard to envision a reality where Buster Posey decides to make a managerial change to try and bring his old manager back to the Giants? Is that too crazy? Am I trying to get too hopeful there, or I don't know. What do you think when I throw that at you?
I think it's a bit hopeful, and I think it's not necessarily crazy because he's a good manager and it all sort of fits. I don't think you can go back. I'm just one of those people that you can't revisit or try and live in yesteryear.
If you're going to make that kind of what Buster is, by bringing Buster back to run the team.
But he's never been a GM before.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think if you want, if there's going to be a change, I'm sort of with you. I've never been all in on Bob Melvin as a manager, just simply because I'm a big personality guy, and at some point, like it all depends. You know how you define managers and coaches these days. It's the culture that you cultivate behind closed doors. Do the players respect you? Do they want to go out and play for you? The only issue I have with Bob Melvin, and this is holds true to a certain degree when you're talking about Bruce Bochy. The older you get, and we hate to age discriminate, there becomes a bigger cavity and a void between the younger players that you become reliant on. They're just not as identifiable. And that's just simple fact. Steve Kerr is facing this to, again, a lesser degree because he's got his 3 veterans. But the younger your roster becomes and the more you turn that over, the more there becomes this huge sort of gap between you and just being relatable. And that more often than not is what is the key to being a successful coach or manager is bringing the best out of today's players because they feel as though you're one of them or they can talk to you or they want to quote-unquote play for you. However it is you define that. So the older you get, to me, there becomes more of this sort of chasm between the younger players, and you always need younger players to be under team control to make sense financially. And sort of even Bob Melvin is encroaching in that area. And if there's one area where I would say it's time for Bob Melvin to do something else, or at least not with the Giants, that would be it. And the same certainly would hold true with Bruce Bochy. In terms of managing, do they still know how to hold or maintain a pen and pitchers, and do they still know how to make the proper substitutions? Certainly. But again, it gets back to those sort of things that you can't necessarily quantify on the chalkboard.
Yeah, that's something I think maybe to keep an eye on there, and I'll try and keep an eye on that more going forward, is how Bob interacts with the younger players. I don't think there's any massive disconnect there that I've noticed at all this season, and I think that's why you got guys in the clubhouse, too. That's where guys like Chapman and Adames are so valuable because they kind of offer a sort of middleman, so to speak, between, you know, the 23-year-olds in the room to where they're at, to where the coaches are at. But, and again, I do like Bob Melvin as a Giants manager. I held a lot of respect for him for what he did with the A's during his time there. He was always the guy for me that was like, when Bochy was running the Giants, Bob Melvin was the guy I looked at as, if the Giants couldn't have Bruce Bochy for whatever reason, I would want the Giants to have Bob Melvin. That's how highly I thought of Bob Melvin when he was running the A's. He did such a phenomenal job there. And honestly, when Farhan Zaidi first came to the Giants, he hired, of course, Gabe Kapler, who unfortunately I didn't get a chance to run into this weekend. Was very sad about that. And I thought Gabe Kapler was a placeholder manager. Like, I thought Gabe Kapler was going to be a placeholder manager until Bob's contract with the A's would end. And that's when Farhan would swoop in and bring Bob Melvin, because Bob Melvin was the platoon guy. He was the platoon manager. He knew how to do the matchups, which is what Farhan wanted to do. And Farhan eventually did end up getting his guy when the Padres released Bob Melvin from his contract there. And unfortunately, though, it was too late. Farhan wasn't able to make it work out, and Bob comes in, and he's still here, and now it's Buster. And the reason I do have pause, though, on Bob's future now, though, with the Giants is because he was not hired by Buster Posey. Teams and GMs, president of baseball operations, what have you, they like to hire their own guys. That was, when, Bruce Bochy had his 1 year under Farhan Zaidi before he stepped down. Obviously, that was going to happen because, Farhan was going to bring in his own guy. That's how all front offices work. It's not unusual. Sometimes it gets messy like that. But, of course, things did not work out with Farhan. And now you got Buster here. And there's the part of me that thinks that if Buster wants his own guy, there is no one who is more Buster's own guy than one Bruce Bochy. Now, again, a lot needs to happen for this reality to come to fruition. Step 1, Giants miss the playoffs. Step 2, Rangers miss the playoffs. Step 3, Bruce Bochy wants out of Texas. Step 4, Giants move off Bob Melvin. Step 5, let's go and get those big cap sizes going again. So a lot has to happen there for that to happen. I'm not advocating for the removal of Bob Melvin, but there is one situation that could come to fruition this offseason where I would be okay moving off Bob Melvin, only if it's because Bruce Bochy is at the other end of that rainbow. Dan, we got a few minutes left in the show here. You got to hear what Larry Baer said about Barry Bonds getting a statue and how that took this station viral this week.
No disagreement from us on that topic. On the radar, I would say on the radar. A statue is, certainly Barry's deserving of a statue, and I would say should be next up. And we don't have
the exact location at the exact date and the exact timing, but you're saying things that we're totally in sync with. It's coming. All I can say is it's coming.
It's coming. All I can say is it's coming. And those are the words, Dan. I tweeted those out on the station's account when he said it. And later that afternoon, Talking Baseball, one of the bigger baseball aggregator accounts, they picked it up saying, Larry Bear on 95.7 The Game said this. Next thing you know, MLB on Fox.
Is that Brzezinski Talking Baseball?
Are they part of the John Boy Media Club?
Oh, okay. So it's Trevor Blue and those guys?
I believe it's those guys, yeah. And then Fox Sports MLB picked it up. And then 2 days ago on ESPN.com, the story is there about the Bond statue is coming, according to Larry Bear, what he said on 95.7 The Game. And then yesterday, as I'm sitting here in the studio producing the Morning Roast with my guy Carter Chickering, I look up on MLB Network, and what Larry Bear said is on MLB Network all of a sudden. And so the Morning Roast went viral this week because of what Larry Bear said about Barry Bonds getting a statue. And so that was really cool to see happen. But then, of course, the second part, which is, well, then where does the statue go? And that's where some of the fun answers started to come in. The most fun answer being, oh, you got to put that statue out in the Cove, because who else put more baseballs in the Cove than one Barry Lamar Bonds?
Good point. I'm thinking, though, the Cove would just get a lot of traffic, though, right?
Like, I don't know how, because there are the kayaks and the boats.
You can walk past there, but there's just not a lot of foot traffic in that part of the park.
Well, I don't know. If you go there on a giveaway day, I don't know if you saw a Jung Hoo Lee jersey giveaway on last Sunday. The lines were, the Willie Mays Gate line stretched all the way across to Mission Rock. The left field dual gate line stretched all the way down to that port walk, all the way down to Seals Plaza. So you can get some foot traffic there on those days. And, of course, you got all the kayakers who would be out there as well around the statue. But as far as boat traffic, I don't think it gets a ton of traffic through there.
Yeah, I think that's... it's funny because Barry Bonds is one of those guys who plays for any other team. The Giants can't stand. The Giants fans can't stand. He is just, imagine Barry Bonds playing for the Dodgers with all the Balco and the steroids.
Well, probably be like Shohei right now.
Well, do you hate Shohei? I don't hate Shohei.
I do.
Oh, you do?
I do. I imagine Shohei in a Dodger uniform. I'm like, is this how Dodger fans felt watching Barry? Because, this dude is objectively the best hitter of this generation, Shohei Ohtani. He is going to be the most electric, fun-to-watch home run hitter for the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And it just sucks because I'm going to hate every single freaking second of it.
Well, you hate him because you are passionate. You bleed orange and black. You always have.
Yeah, and the same way Dodger fans hated Barry Bonds, I'm sure.
No, but I think, take away the fandom. If you're just an objective or if you're just a fan, you're not going to like Barry Bonds simply because of all the steroids and everything that's been connected to him with the illegalities, if you will, of playing Major League Baseball back in the 2000s and being sort of a poster child, him and Sammy Sosa McGuire, of quote-unquote cheating.
Well, yeah, but how's that any different from Shohei Ohtani using his interpreter to bet on baseball? Well, again, legally, I have to say he wasn't found guilty or allegations are attached or whatever. So acknowledging the actual facts of what happened, no, I refuse to believe that it took our federal government, who takes years to solve the simplest cases. There's no way it took them a day to discover that Shohei had nothing to do with it. We had Dave Fleming on right after when that was happening, and he dropped this great line.
Shohei's not going to jail.
We were very excited when this whole stuff came out. It's like, was he get suspended? What's this going to do with the Dodgers? No, I absolutely believe that he had Ippei Mizuhara throwing down bets for him and then threw him under the bus when it happened. But,
I guess my point is that I don't think he's a bad guy. Maybe he was cheating. Maybe he was betting on baseball.
Yeah, because good people can do illegal things.
Sure. I don't think, the Dodgers, I grew up hating the Dodgers. They were much easier to hate for me when I was a kid, and it was Tommy was sort of waddling out there. It was like, oh, God. And they would just pace the Giants every single game out of Candlestick or so beard. It's hard to hate Mookie Betts. I'm sorry.
Mookie Betts I have nothing but respect for. Him and the only other Dodger the only Dodger.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm going to let you say it, but I hope you're not going here. Go ahead. What are you going to say?
Well, the one Dodger who I actually do hold and who actually do like is always going to be Clayton Kershaw.
Oh, God. You're going to say, yeah, I'll give you Clayton. And Clayton, by the way, if he wants to be a broadcaster,
yeah, he's great on the microphone.
So good. But I thought you were going to go Freddie Freeman.
Oh, no. No.
Freddie Freeman is the quintessential Los Angeles Dodger. He is the modern version of Steve Garvey. Perfect, just like everybody loves him.
Face.
And by the way, and I'm loving this, he's a serious funk. This dude is like one for his last 35. Thank God.
Oh, what a shame.
But, before we get out of here, I was just thinking about this because he's one of the best hitters against right-handed pitching. I just happened to read this really bizarre stat.
Freddie?
Yeah, and he can't hit right-handed pitching over the last month.
Oh, what a shame. He's washed.
Somebody needs to explain to me the Willie Dibs splits. Since when does a guy who's so good from the right side of the plate can't hit left-handed pitching? And it's not just this year. Like throughout his entire career, his splits are off the charts. This dude cannot hit southpaws. Like, what's up? That to me is really bizarre.
Baseball's weird that way. I mean, you want to talk about weird splits. I mean, we talk about the ballpark here, and Willie Adames has actually hit better at Oracle than he's hit on the road, which try and figure that one out here. But anyway, yeah, all this to say, a really cool moment this week on this station, breaking this really incredible news on our airwaves and not a different radio station's airwaves.
What's the pose?
Well, that's the other thing. Yeah, what do you do the pose there? I think there's the two fists raised that he did when he hit 756. I always like the one where home run number 73, that picture, where he's kind of looking at the ball go and he's dropping the bat behind him. I think it's got to be one of those two poses.
I kind of like the stance. A little choked up on the bat, on the left side. I mean, he had that distinct. You know what I just love about Bonds? I always say this when we talk about him in reverence, is that when he was going through those when he was the best player in baseball, and he's hitting 70-plus home runs, he was maybe going to get one pitch in that bat, right?
Nobody pitch a day.
Like you were going to get maybe the pitch is going to be like, let me just sneak one by him.
Mm-hmm.
And he squared that thing up 90% of the time.
I'll always remember, I think it was 2006, I believe. It was against the Phillies. It was a Saturday day game. It was a nationally televised game. And so it was a day game. Bonds didn't take any BP before the game. Maybe he probably did some cage work. But he didn't really take any serious BP that day. And he steps to the plate, sees 3 balls to start off. They weren't intentional walks, just 3 balls outside the zone. Doesn't move his bat at all. The 4th pitch goes right in the middle of the strike zone, and he cranked it into right field. And it was like the broadcast was saying that might have been the first time Barry swung the bat today. Like literally, the dude just like got up, got in the box, didn't see anything, then boom, first pitch he sees. The first time he swings a bat that day, just absolutely crushes it. And that's just what Barry was. The other one I always remember is 01. He had that series in Houston at the end of the year. He was intentionally walked every single at-bat except for the last one against Wilfredo Rodriguez, who threw him 2 strikes before Barry just cranked number 70 into the right field seats as well. And again, that's one of the best Bond stories.
I think all you need to know about Barry Bonds back in the day is that it was 1998 when Buck Showalter decided that with the bases loaded, I'm better off walking Barry Bonds than pitching to him.
And here's why. It's here in the YouTube chat instant. He's got a great point here. The walk rate was underappreciated. Why I'm always going to have Barry Bonds over Shohei Ohtani in terms of hitters. Shohei doesn't get walked anywhere near close to how much Barry Bonds gets walked. You will never see Shohei get 122 intentional walks in a year. Shohei will never draw 232 free passes in one baseball season. Shohei sees far more hittable pitches than Barry Bonds ever did, and Barry still was the greatest home run hitter ever. I want to see Shohei do what he's doing now with the same number of pitches that Barry Bonds saw, and let's see if he's still the greatest thing since sliced bread. Let's put our bets on that.
Wait. Well, Bonds couldn't pitch. Or did you have a defense for that?
Well, Shohei can throw 1 inning right now. Ooh, you know who else can throw an inning? Like Spencer Bivens can throw an inning too. Like, come on.
Oh, we didn't really Spencer Bivens. What's he getting?
Let's see.
Sam 11 comes strong to end things here. That is a
high note.
Giant fan. True and all right. That'll do it for us. From a man Sam Lundman for all the producers that showed up here today. We will see you, of course, back here next week for another Orange and Black Sports Wrap. Until then, enjoy the rest of the weekend. And it's the Giants and the White Sox. We'll be back to talk about it beginning on Monday morning with the roast. Until then, so long, everybody.
Later, dudes.
So, what are you reading?
I'm checking out the ratings on the new TVs, and it looks like